The sound of a lifetime of luck? As the slot machine hits the ultimate jackpot. For Kwok Pil Hyop, a newly released convict, it's a second chance at life. But just 3 hours later, high above the Dragon Casino, that second chance has already vanished into thin air. We see him earlier, standing on the edge of the rooftop, a desperate man. He's drowning in regret, wishing he'd just walked away with his winnings. But his moment of despair is interrupted by a calm, knowing voice. A mysterious man in a sharp suit approaches with an unnerving confidence. He lays out Kwok's entire pathetic situation, cut off from his family and too scared to face his debts. "And that's why," the man says with a predatory smile, "I'm going to give you a chance to change everything." He presents an item that begins to pour out an endless stream of cash. The deal is simple, 1,000,000 won every single second for as long as he wants. A deal so good that Kwok Pil Hyop has been lost in it for the last 3 hours. But there's a catch he's only now revealing. With every second that passes, something precious is taken from him. Kwok is too far gone, screaming about the billions he's already made. This is his ticket to the VIP room, his one shot at redemption. The mysterious man simply watches, a faint smile playing on his lips. He's completely oblivious, still celebrating the fortune that is costing him everything. He's completely lost in his own fantasy, convinced he's destined for greatness. But then a sudden jolt of agony sends him collapsing to the ground, coughing uncontrollably. The man in the suit watches him choke, feigning concern. He looks down at the pathetic sight, his expression unreadable. Kwok's face is now gaunt and lifeless, the truth finally dawning on him. The man wonders aloud why he kept taking the money, even as it was killing him. He reveals the horrifying truth. For every one he took, he lost an equal amount of his own body weight. And now, Kwok Pil Hyop is nothing more than a dried-up corpse on a bed of his own greed. The mysterious man simply picks up the wallet, already searching for his next desperate soul. He wonders what his next target will have to lose in exchange for their desires. We cut to a young boy, Cheon Gyeombo, trying to be brave at his parents' funeral. He promises his crying sister, Cheon Eunhwa, that he will take care of her. He reminds her that their names together mean treasures, a sign of their bright future. With all his heart, he vows to succeed and make her rich. His sister, moved by his words, pulls him into a sudden embrace. She thanks him, saying he's the one who should be comforted. She looks at her kind brother, full of hope for the man he will become. But the years have not been kind, and at 17, Cheon Gyeombo is the school's official outcast. He's forced to pose for a humiliating picture, a victim of relentless bullying. But the ringleader, a boy with a smug grin, seems to enjoy every second of it. The scene is interrupted by a furious classmate who screams at the main bully, Yang Ah-jun. She demands to know why they're tormenting another student. The bullies just mock her, dangling her pouch just out of reach. She continues to defend Cheon Gyeombo, who can only watch, stunned by her kindness. Yang Ah-jun simply pats her on the head with a condescending smile. She recoils in disgust, enraged by his casual disrespect. Cheon Gyeombo seethes in silence, vowing that one day things will be different. But for now, Yang Ah-jun just scrolls through his phone, admiring his work, while his friend, Jin Il-seok, laughs at the humiliating photo they just took. Yang Ah-jun continues his mockery, belittling her for defending someone he considers trash. We then cut to a different scene, a fantasy of a much older Cheon Gyeombo, imagining a perfect life with a girl named Shin-ai, convinced he'll win over her entire family. But this delusion shatters as he scrolls through her social media, seeing a picture that breaks his heart. He stands alone by a vending machine, admitting to himself that he'd suspected the truth all along. And now, at 25 years old, the promise of his youth has faded into a life of quiet desperation. Just then his phone buzzes, pulling him from his thoughts. It's a message from his sister, but he's in no mood to talk. She's asking if he wants to get chicken, completely unaware of his heartbreak. But as she shares her good news about a promotion, a faint, bittersweet smile returns to his face. But that moment of hope is shattered by a harsh dose of reality. His coworker berates him for slacking off, snapping him back to his miserable job. As he walks away, Cheon Gyeombo tries to hold on to his optimism, thinking of his sister's success. He dreams of a simple, happy life just like everyone else. He tells himself that as long as he's healthy, sunny days are bound to come. But fate has a cruel twist in store for him. In a doctor's office, he receives a devastating diagnosis: leukemia. The doctor explains that he needs to be hospitalized immediately, leaving no room for denial. His world collapses as he tries to process the news, which came completely out of nowhere. He can only wonder why life has to be so incredibly harsh. He flashes back to a happier time, his sister celebrating a recent promotion. He remembers her pure joy, a memory now tainted with a deep sense of pity. Because in the present, he's the one visiting her in the hospital. He believes that no matter how hard they fight, some people are just destined to fail. And the promise of someday was a luxury they were never afforded from the start. She apologizes for the mounting hospital bills, wishing she had lived her life differently. But her apology only shatters him, wondering why she feels the need to be sorry. He breaks down, overwhelmed by his own regret for not being able to provide for her. Later that night, he rides the train, lost in his thoughts. He opens social media for a distraction, only to be reminded of his own crushing loneliness. He's haunted by memories of being berated, forced to apologize for his very existence. His search history is a sad collection of old classmates from middle and high school. He lacks the courage to actually connect, so he just watches their lives from a distance. He sees those who failed their exams, get sent on celebratory trips to Europe, funded by their parents. He sees others taking over family businesses, driving foreign cars in their 20s, and some are already starting families in homes their parents bought for them. It's an endless feed of luxury travel and perfect moments. A life so far removed from his own that it feels like a different reality. He just stares at his screen, completely lost in a world he'll never be a part of. Even the woman next to him recoils, a look of disgust on her face. He only wanted a distraction, but social media just made his own reality feel worse. He sees flashes of a life he knows he will never have, the simple joys and small luxuries of an ordinary person, and the dream of one day having a family of his own. The crushing weight of his failure settles over him. He slumps forward in his seat, his mental state completely shattered. Later that night, the city is quiet as he returns home. He's been researching his sister's illness, learning the devastating truth about treatment costs. With no savings and their parents' debts to pay, he sits alone, completely and utterly hopeless. He calculates the impossible math of his situation, hospital bills, living expenses, and rent, all on his meager salary. And with a grim sense of finality, he comes to a single, horrifying conclusion. He remembers an insurance policy his sister took out for him, cursing her for not thinking of herself first. His plan is set. He will end his own life so she can use the money for her treatment. But just as he commits to his desperate act, a voice cuts through the silence, asking if he truly has the courage to die. He looks up to see a figure standing over him, a man who seems to have appeared from nowhere. It's the same man from the casino, wearing the same predatory smile, asking if it isn't a waste to just give up. The stranger adjusts his glasses and Cheon-gyumbo can only stammer, asking who he is. The man looks down at him, getting straight to the point. Cheon-gyumbo needs money. He explains that he only appears before those who are truly desperate for it. He offers Cheon-gyumbo enough money to completely change his life. Stunned, Cheon-gyumbo can only stammer, asking why. His mind races, questioning who this person is and, more importantly, how he got inside. He's certain he locked the door, which only adds to his confusion. But the man's impeccable appearance makes him dismiss the idea of a simple intruder. The stranger's calm, imposing figure is reflected in his wide, terrified eye. Everything about him, from his tailored suit to his flawless skin, screams wealth. Cheon-gyumbo wonders if this is just some rich person's twisted idea of charity. Then, a ridiculous idea hits him. It must be for a YouTube video. The man, however, has a much darker thought, believing the poor have no pride to begin with. He accuses the stranger of trying to exploit his situation for some kind of sick online video. A shot of the flypaper in his apartment serves as a grim reminder of his reality. The thought of being used as a charity case fills him with a sudden burning rage. He roars that his family story isn't for sale, refusing to be humiliated for pocket change. In a burst of fury, he shoves the man, demanding to know if he can really offer the billions he so desperately needs. The man's eyes glow with a golden light as he calmly confirms that he can. But then he grabs Cheon-gyumbo by the throat, asking if that amount would truly be enough for all his desires. He whispers of all the possibilities, saving his sister and finally living the life he's always postponed. Of course, he adds with a smirk. There are conditions, and it all depends on Cheon-gyumbo's mindset. Cheon-gyumbo can only stare back in confusion, wondering what he could possibly mean. His mind flashes back to the promises he made as a child. The dreams of a perfect life with Shin-ae on a university campus. He remembers telling himself that as long as he was healthy, things would get better. But now, he realizes just how naive he's been. He turns to the stranger, admitting that he's been living with the wrong mindset all along. He shoves the man away, ranting about his baseless belief that sunny days were just around the corner. He sarcastically asks if the man is about to tell him he can earn billions with the right attitude. He screams that the stranger is just trying to blame him for being poor. He breaks down, insisting he thought that if he just worked hard, he would eventually succeed. But he knows the truth. Some people are born into wealth, becoming multi-billionaires the moment they enter the world. He rants that the wealthy can just pay someone to take their exams for them, and if that fails, they can simply go abroad to launder their academic credentials. Then their parents set them up with a business so they can be called boss. They can become celebrities or streamers, or just marry into a higher social class. He screams that in this society, mindset and effort are completely meaningless. He collapses in despair as the man declares that life is determined by luck from birth. He then suggests that meeting him is the greatest fortune of Cheon-gyumbo's entire life. All he needs is the mindset to bet his life on this one chance. He promises that the money he's offering can change his entire future, and in the reflection of that golden eye, Cheon-gyumbo sees a glimmer of hope. He's at the absolute end of his rope with nowhere left to turn, and before him stands a man who calls himself the king of money. Cheon-gyumbo, still on the floor, cautiously asks what the limit is. He assumes there must be a catch, that the money can't be unlimited. The man praises his sharpness, confirming that he's correct. He explains that one doesn't need infinite wealth to completely change their life. He then pulls out a familiar-looking item, introducing it as the wallet beast. The deal is simple. He can take 1 million won from it. Cheon-gyumbo is stunned, thinking it must be some kind of joke. But the man clarifies the horrifying truth. 1 million won, every single second. He explains that the moment Cheon-gyumbo takes ownership, the wallet's limit will grow by 1 million won every single second. After 10 seconds, it's 10 million. After a minute, 60 million. He paints a picture of a future where cash rains down endlessly around him. Cheon-gyumbo can't even begin to comprehend the staggering amount. The stranger mocks his inability to do the mental math, a condescending smirk on his face. He asks if this incredible sum would finally be enough to satisfy him. And as an added bonus, he reveals the money is completely untraceable and tax-free. He questions Cheon-gyumbo's disbelief, as if the offer is perfectly normal. But if seeing it with his own eyes isn't enough, then there's nothing more he can do. Cheon-gyumbo finally snaps back to reality, remembering the man mentioned a condition. The stranger confirms with a grin that nothing in this world is ever truly free. He explains that while he can take money from the wallet beast anytime he wants, the amount he takes will cause something precious to him to decrease. Cheon-gyumbo can only stare in confusion, asking what he could possibly mean. The man just laughs, mockingly suggesting he take out a few 100 billion to find out. He then holds up 3 fingers, his expression turning serious. There are 3 specific conditions under which the wallet will stop working. The first is when that something related to him keeps decreasing until it vanishes completely. And the second is if he goes 30 days without taking any money, making the wallet's existence pointless. And the third and final condition is if he ever gives up ownership of the wallet, whether through death or abandonment. He asks with a smug grin if the rules are simple enough for him to understand. And now, with the offer laid bare, it's time for Cheon-gyumbo to make his choice. The man explains that the moment he takes the wallet beast, he'll have access to unimaginable wealth. But in exchange, something precious related to him will begin to disappear. He wonders aloud if a man like Cheon-gyumbo can ever truly be happy, even with all that money. Cheon-gyumbo weighs his options. Die now for the insurance money. Or die later as the wallet drains his life away. It's the same outcome either way. And with that grim realization, he concludes there's absolutely no reason to refuse the offer. He lunges forward, ready to seize the cursed power with both hands. With a desperate lunge, Cheon-gyumbo snatches the wallet from the stranger's grasp. The man's eyes flare with a golden light as the deal is officially sealed. A surge of energy courses through Cheon-gyumbo, who lets out a primal scream. The sheer force of it sends him flying backward across the room. He crashes hard onto the floor, his glasses skittering away from him. When he finally looks up, the mysterious man has vanished without a trace. He shakily puts his glasses back on, trying to process what just happened. His eyes fall to the wallet, still clutched tightly in his trembling hand. And just as promised, stacks of cash begin to materialize out of thin air. He can only kneel in shock, convinced that this has to be some kind of lie. He opens the wallet, confirming that it's completely empty. But the moment he reaches inside, he pulls out a massive stack of cash. Even turning it upside down causes an endless stream of bills to pour out, making him question his own sanity. In just a few seconds, he's kneeling in a pile of 65 million won. But as he clutches his chest, he feels a sharp pain, wondering how much of his life he just lost. He realizes it was obvious from the start. The man appeared the moment he decided to die. The deal is a simple trade. Money in exchange for the life he was already willing to throw away. With a grim smile, he accepts his fate, vowing to save his sister with this cursed power. He'll live out his own dreams before his time is up, but then he notices something strange. 2 small black dots have appeared on the wallet, looking almost like a pair of eyes. The 2 black dots on the wallet's surface suddenly blink, revealing a pair of simple, cartoonish eyes. Cheon Gyumbo recoils in absolute horror, scrambling away from the now sentient object. The wallet lands with a soft thud, its expression completely blank. He can only stare in disbelief, wondering if the cursed wallet is actually alive. The next day, he's back at his miserable job at the food processing plant. He sits alone on a bench during his break, clutching a small, cute pouch. He opens the pouch and offers the wallet beast a bottle cap full of water. He apologizes for leaving it alone, feeling a strange sense of responsibility for the creature. But his quiet moment is interrupted by a coworker who tells him to get some fresh air. The coworker leans in with a condescending question, asking if he's lonely. He then bursts out laughing, convinced that Cheon Gyumbo has finally lost his mind. He can't believe he's witnessing someone talking to a simple coin purse. Cheon Gyumbo frantically tries to correct him, insisting it's not what it looks like. But inside the pouch, the wallet beast has closed its eyes, hiding its sentience. He points to where the eyes were, but the coworker just gets angrier, thinking he's being messed with. He threatens to beat some sense into him and delivers a hard slap across his head. The blow triggers a flood of painful memories, a lifetime of being told to get a grip. He's hit again, this time ordered to go buy cigarettes like a common errand boy. Another memory surfaces of being berated in the cafeteria for daring to eat the best part of the meal. The coworker just sneers, saying he looks like he deserves a beating. But in that instant, something inside Cheon Gyumbo finally breaks. As the coworker throws a punch, Cheon Gyumbo easily dodges it. He grabs the man by the head, his expression cold and unfeeling. And with all his pent-up rage, he slams the bully's face into his knee. He tells the dazed man that he's been waiting for this moment. He pulls out a piece of paper, explaining that he finally has a reason to use it. The coworker can only stare in disbelief as he realizes what it is. It's a resignation letter, citing a first-place lottery win as the reason for leaving. And with that, Cheon Gyumbo declares that as of today, he is officially unemployed. Cheon Gyumbo walks with a new sense of purpose, ready for the life he's always hoped for. He grins, determined to enjoy his new status as a wealthy, unemployed man. His first destination is a towering 5-star hotel. He steps inside for the very first time, a thick stack of bills in his hand. He imagines himself surrounded by beautiful women, living out a rich man's fantasy. But his first purchase is actually an enormous, high-end sushi platter. The feast is for his sister, Cheon Yunhwa, who stares in utter disbelief from her hospital bed. She asks what's going on, and he simply tells her she needs to eat well for her chemotherapy. He remembers seeing other people enjoying the same meal when he bought it, and now, with a gentle smile, he urges his sister to eat before it gets cold. But his sister is immediately suspicious, questioning how he could afford such a lavish meal. He knows she's guessing the price is around 30,000 won, a sad reflection of a life spent eating only discount mart sushi. She then changes the subject, asking why he isn't at work right now. She points out his crooked glasses, worried that he's being reckless while she's stuck in the hospital. He quickly reassures her, revealing the incredible news. He won first place in the lottery. She can only stare in disbelief as he insists that it's the truth. He pulls out his phone to show her the winning ticket, explaining he just collected the prize money. Cheon Yunhwa is completely speechless, staring at the proof on his screen. The news sends a shockwave through the hospital room as other patients erupt in excitement. She stares at the phone in disbelief, struggling to comprehend how he could have won first place. But Cheon Gyumbo knows it's just a fake lottery app, and he's relieved his sister was so easily fooled. He urges her to just think of it as a celebration and enjoy the food he brought. The sudden wave of relief is too much for her, and she begins to cry. She confesses how scared she's been, of being sick, of the chemo, and of leaving him all alone. But more than anything, she was terrified that the expensive treatment would become a burden on his future. Wiping away a tear, she expresses how relieved she is that they won't have to use his savings. Cheon Gyumbo is overwhelmed, touched that even now, her first thought is to worry about him. He chugs his drink to hide his emotions, telling her to stop crying and eat. But she gently reminds him that she can't have raw food during chemotherapy, a fact that brings him to a sudden halt. In the end, she shares the lavish meal with the other patients in her room. But their moment is interrupted by a doctor, who has some news for Cheon Yunhwa. He confirms that the private room she applied for is now ready for her to move into. And with a flash, we see the new room, a luxurious suite that looks more like a hotel. It's fully furnished with high-end amenities, a world away from the shared ward. Cheon Yoonhwa is completely stunned, wondering if this is even a hospital room. But Cheon Gumbo just smiles, telling her this is where she'll be staying from now on. She immediately protests, but he explains that her low white blood cell count makes her vulnerable to infection. She tries to argue, but he quickly changes the subject, saying he needs to go buy new glasses. She can only watch him go, a thoughtful and slightly suspicious look on her face. His first stop is a high-end department store, the kind of place he's never dared to enter. But as he steps inside, he freezes, his eyes wide with disbelief, because a familiar, mocking voice calls out to him, a ghost from his past. It's Jin Il-seok, Yang Ae-jun's lackey, the one who laughed while taking that humiliating photo. He remembers the boy's obsession with designer brands, never imagining he'd end up working here. He can only curse his luck, wondering why fate insists on being so cruel. Jin Il-seok condescendingly asks what he's doing here, assuming he's just looking for the bathroom. When Cheon Gyumbo explains he's here to buy clothes and glasses, the bully erupts in laughter. A junior employee tries to calm the situation, but Jin Il-seok just mocks Cheon Gyumbo's inability to afford anything. He then throws an arm around our boy, telling his co-worker that this was his personal errand boy back in high school. He continues his taunts, calling Cheon Gumbo a beggar, but our boy insists he has money, and to prove it, he pulls out a massive stack of cash. He holds it up for the bully to see, his voice firm for the first time. Jin Il-seok is momentarily stunned, unable to process what he's seeing. But that shock quickly melts into a greedy, opportunistic grin. Just then, another customer arrives, a large man decked out in designer gear. Jin Il-seok immediately fawns over him, even kneeling to hem his pants for a photo op. He and his co-worker snap pictures, showering the man with compliments about his killer style. But his inner thoughts reveal his true intentions, to milk this wealthy customer for a huge commission. When the man agrees to buy everything, Jin Il-seok can hardly contain his excitement. Jin Il-seok slaps the man on the back, praising his generosity with a fake, condescending nickname. But the wealthy customer cuts him off, refusing to be served by him. Instead, he points directly at Cheon Gyeombo, declaring that our boy will be his personal shopper. Jin Il-seok is stunned as the man calmly asserts his right to choose who he buys from. He gets right in the bully's face, warning him that he'll be a regular customer, and that he will only be buying from Cheon Gyeombo. Cheon Gyeombo nervously plays along, guiding his new client as Jin Il-seok trembles with rage in the background. Later, a message is sent from Jin Il-seok mocking the customer for his sudden wealth and massive spending spree. The recipient is none other than Yang Ae-jun, who laughs at the message while celebrating an anniversary. But his date is less than thrilled, questioning why he's glued to his phone during their special dinner. Yang Ae-jun laughs, showing his date a ridiculous message from Jin Il-seok. He asks if she remembers their old classmate, Cheon Gumbo. He shows her the photo of the boy they used to bully, now decked out in designer clothes. But their conversation is interrupted by that very same person, who confidently greets them by name. Cheon Gumbo stands over their table, a completely different man from the one they remember. Yang Ae-jun feigns surprise, but our boy's narration reveals this meeting was anything but a coincidence. He explains that after leaving the store, he went searching for a place to eat. That's when he stumbled upon a social media post from Shin-ae, celebrating her anniversary. With a cold smile, he admits that he came to this exact restaurant on purpose. Yang Ae-jun can only stare, his mind connecting the dots to the lottery rumor he just heard. Yang Ae-jun's mind races, trying to make sense of the lottery rumor and the designer clothes. Shin-ae greets him with a smile, remarking on how much he's changed, but he casually disagrees. He then points to their cake, feigning surprise as he notes their first anniversary. He offers a hollow congratulations, a gesture that seems to confuse Shin-ae. With a deliberate motion, he places the cake right in the middle of their table. He leans in close to Yang Ae-jun, whispering that he's gotten cheap since they last met. He mocks him for ordering a la carte on their anniversary, a move that leaves the bully completely stunned. Yang Ae-jun tries to justify his choice, explaining the menu options in detail. But Cheon Gyeombo just scoffs, picking up a wine glass to continue his critique. He takes a long sniff, declaring that he can tell just by the smell that it's cheap wine. Yang Ae-jun's face twists into a furious grin, his composure finally cracking. He lunges forward, grabbing Cheon Jumbo's shirt and threatening to remind him of his place. But our boy calmly grabs his wrist, warning him not to stretch his brand new designer clothes. Shin-ae jumps up, begging Yang Ae-jun to stop, horrified by the sudden violence. Cheon Gyeombo holds up a hand, asking for a moment as he calmly de-escalates the situation. He then pulls out a bottle of incredibly expensive vintage wine. Turning to Shinae, he explains this is a gift to repay her for defending him all those years ago. She tries to refuse, but he firmly places the bottle on the table, refusing to take it back. With a casual wave, he says his goodbyes, leaving the stunned couple to their date. Shinae immediately lights up, telling Yang Ajun how perfect this is since they were trying to save money on wine. But Yang Ajun is anything but pleased, his face contorted with rage. He follows Cheon Geumbo out of the restaurant, shouting a familiar, hateful nickname. He slaps the bottle away, screaming that he won't accept a handout from a beggar. In a desperate attempt to save face, he shoves his card at the staff, demanding they charge it to him. But his bravado shatters when he's told the bottle costs a staggering 3.5 million won. Cheon Gumbo just smiles, reminding the bully of his earlier attempts to save money. The moment triggers a painful memory of Yang Ajun confiscating his earbuds in high school. He remembers being told to live within his means, a cruel jab at his poverty. Now Cheon Gumbo throws those same words back, telling him to mooch off Shinae instead. Utterly defeated, Yang Ajun can only slam his money on the counter, his pride costing him dearly. Later, Cheon Gumbo treats himself to a simple but satisfying meal of grilled pork belly. He happily declares that no matter how fancy the food, this will always be his favorite. It's a simple pleasure he's missed after years of barely scraping by. And for the first time in a long time, he's determined to eat his absolute fill. He even remembers his new companion, offering a piece of meat to the wallet beast. The creature just stares back, its expression completely blank and unreadable. But then he notices a small protrusion on its side, which suddenly unfurls into a tiny wing. He can only watch in confusion as the wallet beast happily flaps its new appendages. A shocking thought suddenly crosses his mind, a wild and unbelievable theory. He wonders if the more money he takes, the more the wallet beast will continue to evolve. He remembers that when he first received it, the wallet was just an inanimate object. But right after he took out that first 65 million won, it suddenly grew eyes and began to move on its own. And now, after his latest spending spree, it has even sprouted a pair of wings. He calculates the total, realizing he's already spent over 250 million won. He admits to himself that he was so blinded by the money, he didn't even notice the changes. The more the wallet beast evolves, the faster his own life is draining away. He places another piece of meat on the grill, trying to ignore the grim reality. But he pushes the thought aside, vowing to do everything he's ever wanted before he dies. For now, that means eating cold pork belly until he's completely full, even if he lets it burn. The next morning, Cheon Gyumbo stares in utter horror, as he steps onto the scale, wondering how this is possible. After gorging himself on pork belly, he's reached a new personal record. He worries that at this rate, high cholesterol will get him before the wallet does. Holding the wallet beast, he realizes he needs to take better care of himself. After all, there are still so many things he wants to do before his time is up. For the first time in his life, he's actually looking forward to tomorrow, planning out his next lavish meals. His small, dingy room is now cluttered with stacks of cash and designer clothes. The old fan continues to whir in the corner, and the faucet in his kitchen still drips, a stark reminder of the life he's leaving behind. He jolts awake in a state of absolute panic. He sits up, frantically wondering why his alarm never went off. He checks his phone, convinced he's already late for work. But then he remembers the little creature resting on his pillow. A slow smile spreads across his face as he realizes he doesn't have a job to go to anymore. He greets his new companion, whom he's affectionately named Lotto-chan. For the first time in years, he has a weekday with absolutely nothing to do. He gets a haircut, still marveling at how he quit his job without a second thought. He remembers the cold sweats he'd get just from being a few minutes late. But now, with money in his pocket, he's not afraid of anyone or anything. He makes a grand entrance into another luxury store, ready to spend. He finally understands the source of a rich person's unwavering confidence. He used to feel out of place in these wealthy neighborhoods, completely intimidated. But now he feels like he belongs, walking with a newfound sense of self-assurance. His confident stroll is interrupted by a car pulling up beside him. A beautiful woman in a designer dress steps out onto the curb. He's completely captivated, wondering if he's just seen a celebrity in person. He can only stare as she walks by, a perfect example of the high-class world he's just entered. He watches her enter a building, his curiosity piqued by the sudden encounter. He looks up at the building's directory, which is filled with signs for exclusive clubs and bars. He tries to snap himself out of it, telling himself not to waste his first day of freedom. He reminds himself that money is the most important thing. But then he corrects himself, believing that pure love is what truly matters. Just then, the beautiful woman from before calls out to him. She gives him a warm, disarming smile. Cheon Gyumbo is completely stunned, his face flushing red. She compliments his unique style and asks if he has a moment to talk. He can only stare in disbelief, realizing he's actually being picked up. His mind races, connecting his new hair, clothes, and confidence all back to one source. He concludes that because he has money, beautiful women will now come to him. He enthusiastically agrees, thrilled that his new look is already getting him noticed. But her smile widens as she pulls out a camera, revealing this isn't a pickup but an interview. Cheon-gyum-bo can only stare in shock, the lens capturing his stunned expression. The woman circles him, asking her audience to guess the total cost of his designer outfit. He nervously claims he doesn't remember the prices, a response she praises as the ultimate rich person flex. But then he remembers the receipts, fumbling through his new clutch to prove his purchases. She celebrates this discovery, declaring that the receipts are proof that everything is authentic. With a sly grin, she takes the slips of paper, offering to calculate the grand total for him. The result is a viral social media post, breaking down his entire 18 million won outfit for the world to see. Later, back in his dingy room, Cheon-gyum-bo watches the video, already a minor internet sensation. But his newfound fame comes with a price, as a message notification pops up on his screen. It's a long, desperate plea for money, a sob story designed to pull at his heartstrings. He realizes this is the kind of attention celebrities get, a constant barrage of requests from strangers. His DMs are flooded with similar messages, a consequence of carelessly sharing his social media account. The sudden attention is overwhelming, and he considers just deleting the account to escape it all. But as he scrolls through the endless requests, one particular message catches his eye. He does a violent spit take, completely stunned by what he's just seen. Because the message is from someone he never expected to hear from. A user named Princess Ren. His mind flashes to her social media, a popular influencer he's clearly familiar with. He can only stare in disbelief, wondering if the real Princess Ren has actually just contacted him. He remembers Princess Ren, the undisputed goddess of their high school. From freshman year, she was so popular that even bullies like Yang A-jun had to bow down. In other words, she conquered the entire school with her beauty alone. Cheon-gyum-bo realizes they were from completely different worlds, and he'd probably never even spoken to her. But now, sitting in his messy room, he wonders if he should risk sending a reply. He types out a simple greeting, calling her by her old nickname. To his absolute shock, she reads it almost instantly. Her reply comes just as fast, casually remarking that he hasn't changed at all. He's completely floored that the princess actually remembers who he is. But her next question immediately sets off alarm bells in his head. She asks if he's the same person who just won the lottery, a question that makes him freeze. We cut to a different scene, a man fantasizing about a classic romance, imagining a fated reunion with a girl from his past. He receives a delivery, a small comfort for his lonely night. He opens his door, ready to eat and chat with his online friend, but his expression immediately drops in utter confusion. He turns around in a panic, wondering how this could possibly be happening. His small, cute companion is left forgotten on the pillow. Because standing in his doorway are Yang A-jun and Jin Il-seok, the last people he ever wanted to see. Jin Il-seok mocks him, revealing they tracked him down using the membership card he signed up for at the store. Jin Il-seok pushes Cheon-gyum-bo inside, saying they have a lot to talk about. The door slams shut, trapping him with his old tormentors. They immediately start mocking his messy apartment, but Cheon-gyum-bo knows this is a surprise attack. He realizes that since they came together, they must be here for revenge over what happened yesterday. But Cheon-gyum-bo just stares back, his expression hardening with resolve. A sudden panic hits him as he frantically searches for Lotto-chan. He knows that to everyone else, the wallet is just an inanimate object. He carefully scoops it up, whispering that he'll keep it safe. Just as Yang A-jun calls his name, Cheon-gyum-bo turns to face the confrontation head-on. Yang A-jun reminds him that they have something to discuss, a smug grin on his face. But Cheon-gyum-bo clenches his fist, declaring that he's no longer the loser they remember. He warns them that whatever they do to him, he'll use his money to do the same right back. His eyes are filled with a cold determination, ready for whatever comes next. But the expected fight never comes, and the tension in the room suddenly vanishes. Instead, his two former tormentors are kneeling on the floor in front of him. They try to frame their visit as an investment opportunity, their arrogance replaced with a desperate plea. Yang A-jun asks to borrow 100 million won, promising to pay it back with interest. When asked why they need the cash, they spin a sob story about being scammed by stock fraudsters. Cheon-gyum-bo can only watch as they argue, stunned that Yang A-jun and Jin Il-seok are actually kneeling before him. Yang A-jun tries to frame their plea as a great investment opportunity for Cheon-gyum-bo, But our boy's mind flashes back to a painful memory of his past. He remembers being cornered by these same two bullies in high school. In the present, they try to smooth things over, suggesting they forget the past and be friends. Yang Aejun lectures him on how the rich are supposed to help the poor. He asks for confirmation, a desperate and pathetic look on his face. But the memory continues, showing the bullies complaining about his younger self's stubbornness. He remembers pleading with them, explaining the money was for his sister's birthday. Yang Aejun just grabs him by the hair, threatening to kill him if he doesn't hand it over. Back in the present, Cheon-gumbo's face is a mask of cold fury. He turns their twisted logic back on them, suggesting the poor should be the ones to crawl. But before he decides anything, he has one condition. He gets to hit each of them just once. Jin Il-seok erupts in fury at the suggestion, but Yang Aejun holds him back. He whispers for his friend to just play along, convinced Cheon-gumbo's punches are weak. Yang Aejun reminds him to think of the money, a greedy and desperate plea. Jin Il-seok reluctantly agrees, telling him to avoid his face so he can still go to work. Cheon-gumbo asks if one hit is all it will take to erase their past. He winds up for a punch, his expression a mask of cold fury. The blow connects with a force that shatters Jin Il-seok's arrogant smirk, and the bully goes flying backward as Yang Aejun watches in absolute horror. Jin Il-seok collapses to the floor in a dramatic, over-the-top display. Cheon-gumbo can only stare, surprised by the shameless performance. He knows the bully is just faking it, a man who would sell his soul for a bit of cash. But Yang Aejun steps forward, determined not to be outdone, and tells him to take his best shot. He throws a punch of his own, trying to catch Cheon-gumbo off guard. But our boy catches the fist with ease, stopping the attack in its tracks. In that moment, Yang Aejun's entire world seems to short-circuit. We then cut to the hospital, where his sister tells him not to worry about her. She's on the phone, explaining that her co-workers have come to visit. And as they chat, they tease her about her lucky, money-making brother. Her co-workers express their relief, saying her reliable brother has put their minds at ease. They encourage her to get better soon, reminding her that she's too young to be stuck in a hospital. But the mood shifts as they remember another colleague who also had to quit because of leukemia. Cheon Yunhwa listens quietly as they speculate on the cause of the terrible illness. We cut to Cheon-gumbo, now significantly heavier, as he finishes his call with his sister. He lets out a heavy sigh, unable to shake the anxiety that still lingers. He's on his way to meet Princess Ren, the girl who messaged him online. But a wave of panic hits him as he realizes he's never been alone with a woman before. Suddenly, a hand grabs his shoulder from behind, and a finger playfully pokes his cheek, catching him completely off guard. It's Princess Ren who greets him with a warm smile and a casual, long time no see. Cheon-gumbo is completely stunned, his face flushing a deep shade of red. He can't believe that the most popular girl from his high school is actually making physical contact with him. She asks if he's eaten yet, suggesting they find a place to have a meal. He snaps back to reality, realizing he was completely lost in the moment. He quickly tries to take charge, saying he's already found a restaurant nearby. But she gently takes his arm, stopping him in his tracks. She explains that she already has a reservation and that they should go there instead. Cheon-gumbo is once again completely overwhelmed by her confidence and charm. He admits to himself that he was so flustered, he doesn't even remember the walk to the restaurant. All he can remember is her warm smile as she held onto his arm, and how everyone on the street, men and women alike, couldn't help but stare. He was hyper-aware of her touch, her skin pressed against his sweaty arm. Every nerve in his body was focused on that single point of contact. The restaurant she'd chosen was an exclusive place with only private rooms. Inside, the air conditioning was blasting, making the room feel almost chilly. But despite the cold, sweat was pouring down his face like rain. She asks if he's hot, and he panics, wondering why she's sitting so close to him. She reaches out to touch his face, noting how much he's sweating. She asks if he's okay, her expression full of genuine concern. Her finger gently touches his lips, sending him into a state of shock. She leans in even closer, and he feels like his heart is about to stop. He's completely frozen, unable to process how close she is. But then, his eyes catch sight of something on her arm. He instinctively grabs her wrist, stopping her from moving any closer. He asks her a question that completely changes the mood in the room. Her expression shifts from playful to surprised by his sudden concern. She laughs it off, asking what he could possibly be talking about. But he points to the patches on her arm, asking if they're covering up bruises. She explains that they're just simple cold and warm patches for muscle soreness. But he points out that using both hot and cold patches is a specific treatment for bruises. He asks her directly who's been hitting her, offering to help if she needs it. She just laughs at his sudden seriousness, covering her mouth in amusement. She dismisses his concern entirely, asking who would ever dare to lay a hand on her. She explains that the marks are just from pole dancing, a common side effect of the sport. With a confident pose, she reminds him that a body like hers takes a lot of hard work. His mind immediately conjures an image of the school's princess pole dancing. The thought sends him into a state of absolute flustered shock. She casually changes the subject, asking what he wants to order for their meal. He can only stare at his fork, as the narration reveals their meal is a 230,000 won course. The portions are tiny, each one a meticulously crafted work of art. He's amazed that they change the tableware with every single course, and as he cuts into his steak, his mind drifts back to a very different meal. He remembers his sister's weekly bibimbap day, a simple tradition of throwing all their leftovers into a single bowl. It was a meal born from necessity, a way to make sure nothing went to waste. Until now, he'd only ever thought of food as a way to fill his stomach. But he's just now realizing that for the wealthy, it's an experience to be savored. His silence makes her wonder if he's enjoying himself, and he quickly insists that everything is delicious. She just smiles, playfully teasing him for finally starting a conversation. Cheon-gyeom-bo can only listen, lost in his own thoughts. She muses that people with money are naturally kinder and more gentle. He remembers how she's been so kind to him since they met up. She's been nothing but considerate and friendly, making him feel completely at ease this entire time. But then she leans in close, her touch sending a jolt through his entire body. He's completely frozen, his mind going blank from the sudden intimacy. He finally works up the courage to ask what she was doing just as his phone begins to buzz. He glances at the screen and leaps to his feet in a panic, realizing he's forgotten something important. It's a call from a real estate office, a sudden and urgent interruption to their date. He explains to the realtor that he has an important appointment, trying to get out of the viewing. He asks if it would be possible to see the house tomorrow instead. But the realtor pressures him, saying the property is in high demand and won't be available for long. Princess Ren overhears the conversation, asking if he's going to look at a house. She tells him not to worry about her, a reassuring smile on her face. Instead, she suggests that they can just go to the viewing together. And so they arrive at a massive, newly constructed apartment complex near the station. It's a luxury property with beautiful walking paths and community facilities. The complex even has its own shopping center, a world away from his current life. Inside, the realtor welcomes them to a spacious, empty unit that's ready for immediate move-in. The realtor pitches the unit as a perfect home for newlyweds. Cheon-gyeom-bo immediately panics, frantically insisting that they're just friends. He clarifies that the apartment is for his sister, who will be living there alone. But he's not satisfied with the view, asking if there's a unit that overlooks the complex's landscaping. The realtor explains that the perfect unit upstairs has already been taken. Cheon-gyeom-bo asks if it's possible to contact the person who signed the contract. He then makes an incredible offer. He'll pay triple the deposit if they agree to cancel. He even offers to cover any additional moving costs, leaving the realtor completely stunned. But Princess Ren steps in, questioning his decision. She points out that with that much money, he could find a much better place, wondering why he's so fixated on this one. He explains that this was his sister's greatest wish, to live in this very apartment. He tells the realtor to ask for any amount, insisting he can match whatever price they name. His mind flashes back to his sister, overjoyed at a simple gift. He remembers them walking home after receiving free appliances from a wealthy neighbor. Back then, he'd noticed similar patches on his sister's arm, asking if she was hurt. But she just brushed it off, claiming it was muscle pain from gym class. The truth, however, was a secret he could never bring himself to tell her. He knew she was lying to protect him, just as he was lying to protect her. And in his shame, he could only apologize for being a brother who couldn't even afford a birthday gift. He remembers promising that one day he would make enough money to buy her anything she wanted. She had playfully pointed to the distant apartment complex, telling him to buy that for her. He'd laughed it off as an impossible dream, but she just called it a joke. But she confessed that her only wish was to live in a home with a beautiful view, not one blocked by a wall. And so, back in the present, the previous contractor gladly accepted his offer of a triple deposit. With a simple signature, the apartment with the perfect view officially became his sister's. On that same day, he also signed a contract for a place of his own. He chose a fully furnished penthouse on the 54th floor of the country's tallest residence. But Princess Ren is stunned by the terms of the short-term lease. She whispers that the monthly rent alone is more than most people make in an entire year. But faced with her question, Cheon-gyeom-bo can only blush, completely lost for words. He can't possibly tell her the truth, that every one he spends is a second of his life draining away. Now that his sister's future is secure, he's filled his closet with enough cash to cover all her expenses. He gently pets Lotto-chan, asking the creature to stay with him until the very end. But his quiet moment of resolve is shattered by a sudden sound from his front door. He walks over to the intercom, wondering who it could be since he hasn't ordered any food. His eyes go wide with absolute shock at the face staring back at him from the screen. It's Princess Ren, the last person he ever expected to see at his new apartment. He opens the door to find her standing there, leaving him to wonder how she even found this place. She's already made herself at home on his couch, looking up at him with a shocking proposal. She asks if they can live together, a question that sends Cheon-gyeombo into a complete meltdown. With a coy smile, she explains that she was evicted after falling behind on rent. He's completely baffled, remembering her social media posts that painted a picture of immense wealth. He recalls seeing her at luxury hotels and expensive restaurants, living a life of pure fantasy. The idea that she could be broke just doesn't make any sense to him. But she casually explains that her lavish lifestyle was all funded by sponsorships. With enough followers and the right look, she says, expensive offers just come rolling in. But she admits that sponsorships don't pay the bills, leaving her with no actual cash. She then leans in close, asking if she can stay with him until she saves up a new deposit. The sudden proposal leaves him completely flustered, his mind racing with the possibilities. His mind reels at the thought of living with the girl he once saw as a princess. He tries to think calmly, comparing his situation to a classic fantasy trope. The beautiful girl and the average guy, a story he's seen 100 times in manga. He wonders if this kind of unbelievable luck is more common than he thought. The very idea sends a blush creeping across his face. He snaps back to reality, standing awkwardly in his own living room. He asks why she didn't bring any of her clothes or belongings with her. She explains that she was kicked out of her apartment while she was away. An eviction notice was slapped on her door for unpaid rent, and the landlord changed the locks. And now she has nowhere else to go with nothing but the clothes on her back. She then asks if she can borrow some clothes to change into. A moment later, she emerges wearing one of his oversized anime shirts. The sight sends Cheon-gyeombo into a state of absolute shock, completely overwhelmed by her charm. He's so flustered that even his favorite character on the shirt can't compare to the real thing. She calls out his name, snapping him out of his daze. With a warm smile, she asks if he's hungry and offers to cook something for them. She immediately gets to work, cracking an egg into a pot on the stove. Cheon-gyeombo can only watch from a distance, nervously checking his phone. He can't believe the school's princess is actually cooking for him in his own home. His mind drifts to a fantasy of them cooking together like a happy couple. He's completely lost in a fantasy of a perfect newlywed life. She calls him to the table, and he eagerly rushes over, still lost in his delusion. But in reality, she apologizes for only being able to make ramen with what was in his fridge. His fantasy shatters as he stares down at a bowl of incredibly watery noodles. He can only compare it to the instant ramen he's used to, as she admits she may have added too much water. She searches for the noodles in the soupy broth, blaming herself for the mistake. But he quickly reassures her, insisting that less salt is much better for his health. He thanks her for the meal and takes his first bite without hesitation. She watches him with a gentle smile, then begins to eat her own bowl. But as he eats, a somber thought crosses his mind about the day he will eventually die. He believes that one day he'll look back on this moment and find it too precious to die. Later, Lotto-chan rests peacefully on a pillow inside the money-filled wardrobe. Cheon-gyeombo checks on it, worried that it might feel stuffy inside the closet. But he closes the door, figuring that creatures like dark, enclosed spaces. He turns back to the living room, wondering if Princess Ren has already fallen asleep. But he's surprised to see her completely engrossed in a familiar anime on TV. He excitedly asks if she knows the show, and she confirms she's rewatching it. He immediately launches into a passionate lecture about what it means to be a true fan of the series. She just laughs, amused by how serious he's suddenly become. With a gentle smile, she suggests they just watch it together since he can't sleep. He gets incredibly passionate, asking her to specify which of his many watch-throughs she's referring to. The show on screen depicts a dramatic, emotional scene between two characters. They both watch intently, completely absorbed in the moment. He erupts in excitement, pointing out the iconic line being spoken. But as he continues his rant, Princess Ren has already fallen asleep on his shoulder. He freezes mid-sentence, pointing at the screen, completely unaware that she's no longer listening. He finally notices her, his face flushing as he stammers her name. He panics, wondering if this is some kind of joke or if he's dreaming. But a closer look confirms that she is in fact sound asleep. He's left sitting in the dark, completely frozen and unsure of what to do next. The next morning, high above the city in his new luxury penthouse, Princess Ren is still sleeping soundly on the couch. She slowly begins to stir, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. Her gaze falls on Cheon Gyumbo, who is already up and dressed for the day. She greets him with a cheerful yawn, admitting she passed out during their anime marathon. But he plays it cool, insisting he was too excited to sleep a wink. She notices he's about to head out and asks where he's going so early. He explains that he's on his way to pay the final balance for his sister's new home. She waves him off, but then stops him with one last question. With a polite smile, she asks if she can use his computer while he's away. Cheon Gyumbo happily agrees, telling her there's a laptop in the other room. He gives her a friendly wave as he heads out for the day. But the moment the door clicks shut, her entire demeanor changes, her warm smile replaced by a cold, calculating stare. Later that evening, as rain pours down over the city, Cheon Gyumbo returns home to find his belongings scattered by the door. He stands there, soaked and confused, realizing that Princess Ren is nowhere to be found. And to his horror, the closet is completely empty. The money and Lotto-chan have vanished. A silent scream rips through him as the devastating betrayal finally sinks in. We flash back a few hours to him happily stamping the final papers for his sister's new home. He's told that all he needs to do now is deposit the final balance. He thinks to himself that with this one transfer, they will finally have a home of their own. He remembers their past, moving from one tiny room to another after their parents passed away. He recalls the day they finally got a 2-room apartment, and his sister excitedly gave him his own space. They argued playfully over who should take the better room, a fond but bittersweet memory. But now, with 3 rooms and 2 bathrooms, there will be no more fighting over space. He imagines her future with enough room to raise a family of her own, and he prays that even after he's gone, his sister will find happiness in this house. He proudly tells the realtor that the balance has been sent, and she confirms its arrival. But just as he's about to hand over the documents, his phone begins to buzz. It's a call from his sister's hospital, a sudden and confusing interruption. He rushes over, his heart pounding with a terrible sense of dread. He arrives to find the doctor waiting for him with grim news. His sister's condition has taken a sudden and drastic turn for the worse. He stands over her bed, completely stunned by the sight. He demands to know how she could get so sick overnight, insisting she was fine just yesterday. The doctor explains that her neutrophil count has dropped significantly. Cheon Gyumbo can only repeat the words, trying to understand what they mean. He's told she has a fever and needs a new, non-covered drug that requires his consent. The words echo in his mind, a horrifying realization dawning on him. He remembers the mysterious man's warning that the money he takes from the wallet beast would cause something precious related to him to decrease. The man's smug smile now feels like a death sentence, and in the hospital, Cheon Gyumbo finally understands the horrifying truth. The something precious wasn't his own life, but that of his only blood relative. Every single one he spent was taken directly from his sister's health. He was literally buying his dreams by selling her life. Overwhelmed by guilt, he can only cry at her bedside as the rain pours outside. He then bolts from the hospital, running frantically through the storm. He clutches the housing contract, desperately trying to convince himself that it's not too late. He clings to a desperate hope that if he returns the money, he can reverse the curse. He believes that if he can just do that, his sister will surely get better. He races back to his apartment through the pouring rain. But when he gets there, he finds his shoes and the contract discarded by the door. He stares in horror at the closet, realizing all the money is gone. And to his absolute terror, Lotto-chan has vanished as well. His mind flashes to Princess Ren, the only person who could have taken it. But then another, even more horrifying possibility crosses his mind. He remembers the mysterious man's 3 conditions for the wallet to stop working. The first was when the precious thing related to him completely vanishes. He realizes that as his sister's life force dwindled, Lotto-chan, the source of his power, has vanished along with it. He screams out its name, his mind completely shattered. A raw, guttural scream of pure agony and regret. He refuses to accept this fate, vowing that he can't let his sister die like this. He collapses to his knees, begging to become a penniless beggar again. He just wants to return the money, to undo everything and go back to how things were. But his desperate prayer is interrupted by a faint electronic beep. He looks over and sees a small, fluffy creature hiding under a table, a new form of Lotto-chan. He cries out in relief, overjoyed that Lotto-chan hasn't disappeared after all. But he notices its new appearance, wondering if it has evolved once again. He quickly pushes that thought aside, explaining that his sister is in critical condition. He begins feeding the creature stacks of cash, hoping to reverse the curse. To his immense relief, the plan seems to be working as Lado-chan devours the money. He realizes the cash he'd set aside for his sister's house is still here, untouched. It seems Princess Ren only stole the money that was stored inside the closet. He clings to the hope that if he feeds all of this back to the wallet, his sister will recover. He desperately encourages the creature, begging it to restore his sister's health. But the creature suddenly stops, its mouth full and its eyes closed in contentment. But instead of taking the money back, Lado-chan begins to spit it all out in a massive explosion of cash. Cheon Geumbo can only watch in horror, his hope instantly turning to dread. He begs the creature to stop, pleading with it not to do this. With tears streaming down his face, he begs it to save his sister. But the creature just spits out one final bill, its task seemingly complete. The next day, Cheon Geumbo stands in the doctor's office, his expression completely numb. He can hardly believe the news as the doctor confirms his sister's condition has stabilized. Overwhelmed with relief, he thanks the doctor profusely. He breaks down, confessing that he thought his sister was going to die because of him. The doctor offers a word of comfort, explaining that this is a marathon, not a sprint. He explains that these fluctuations are a normal, if difficult, part of the treatment process. The doctor tells him that his sister is fighting hard and that he needs to be her strength. Overcome with relief, Cheon Geumbo promises that he remembers the absolute despair he felt when Lado-chan spat all the money back out. In that moment, he truly believed he had killed his own sister, but now he's filled with a profound sense of relief, realizing the wallet isn't draining her life after all. He stops on the stairs, a sudden thought bringing him to a halt. If it wasn't his sister's health, then what is the wallet actually taking from him? He stands there, completely lost as he tries to solve the horrifying puzzle. But he shakes the thought away, deciding that as long as his sister is safe, nothing else matters. He tells himself that everything he's done has been for his sister. And now he visits her in her new private room. She turns around, hearing him enter the room. A bright smile spreads across her face as she greets him. But her first instinct is to worry about him, asking why he's sweating so much. Seeing her concern, he makes a new promise to himself. He asks if there's anything she's ever wanted to do, vowing that from now on he will make all her dreams come true. And with that new resolve, he gets to work on his computer. Because there's one more piece of unfinished business he needs to take care of. He stares at his computer screen, vowing that Princess Ren will pay for her betrayal. But his thoughts of revenge are interrupted by his sister, who says there is one thing she wants. Her request, however, leaves him completely stunned. He asks why she would ever think her illness could be considered an industrial accident. She explains that a few days ago, her co-workers came to visit her in the hospital. As they were leaving, they wished her a speedy recovery. But after they left, she overheard them talking in the hallway. They mentioned another colleague from a different department who also had to quit because of leukemia. The strange coincidence immediately caught her attention, and just then, she noticed a strange man in a suit watching her from down the hall. She remembers a visit from her general manager, who looked less than sympathetic. He had presented her with a folder, explaining that company policy wouldn't allow for indefinite sick leave. He claimed that her absence was putting an unfair burden on the rest of the team, and so, for everyone's sake, he presented her with a resignation letter to sign. The document was a legal trap, forcing her to waive all rights to hold the company liable for anything. He promised to process her final pay quickly, a smug and condescending look on his face. Cheon Eunhwa could only clutch the folder, completely stunned by the company's cruelty. She quietly asked if she could have some time to think before signing the papers. He agreed with a disingenuous smile, telling her he'd be back to pick it up the next day. But she clarified that it might take longer, as she was beginning to suspect her illness was an industrial accident. Cheon Geumbo slams his fist on the table, shocked by her accusation. The manager had been completely caught off guard by her sudden defiance. He'd tried to patronize her, suggesting that sick people just look for someone to blame. He then attempted to guilt-trip her, asking if it was fair to hurt the company over her feelings. He leaned in close, feigning disappointment at her ungrateful attitude. His friendly mask finally slipped as he threatened her with disciplinary action and dismissal. He then asked for her wise judgment, a thinly veiled threat to force her hand. Back in the present, she explains that the company has been calling her every single day. They're desperate for her to sign the resignation, even though they could just fire her. But as they walk, she admits the doctor couldn't confirm the cause, leaving them with no proof. She looks up with determination, wanting to prove the company is responsible while she still can. A lone jet streaks across the sky, a symbol of her new, difficult goal. She then reveals a secret savings account she's been keeping for him all these years, and she asks if she can use that money to fund her fight against the company. But to her complete shock, Cheon Gumbo immediately refuses.
He declares that he will take the money she saved for him.
A decision she seems to understand as she offers a gentle, knowing smile, but only so he can use his own fortune to uncover the truth for her. He smiles, a sudden realization dawning on him. He finally understands that the heroes in comics always have a clear target for their hatred. He reflects on how heroes in stories gain special abilities, and with them, a sense of mission worth dying for. That mission becomes the protagonist's entire life goal, and he realizes that this is the true reason he was given the power of Lado-chan. He lies on his bed, writing out a new list of goals. It's no longer about just spending money for himself or his sister, but about using that money to change the world. Later that evening, a new resolve has settled over him. He looks at Lado-chan, ready to begin their new mission together. His first order of business is to find a top-tier law firm specializing in industrial accidents. But as he opens her computer, he's shocked to find he's still logged into her social media account. He realizes she must have forgotten to log out after using his laptop. But as he goes to sign out, his eyes catch something in her chat history. It's a message mentioning someone getting 500 million won in cash. Cheon Gumbo can only stare, wondering what this could possibly mean. He clicks on the chat to investigate, but it's already too late. A notification pops up, informing him that the chat room has been deleted. And just a moment later, he's forcibly logged out of her account. He realizes she must have seen the login notification and scrambled to cover her tracks. He admits that with his sister's health crisis, he hadn't had time to think about it until now. He now knows for certain that Princess Ren stole the 500 million won from his closet. Cheon Gumbo sits at his desk, a new fire burning within him. He makes a silent vow that one day she will pay for her betrayal. Meanwhile, in a small restaurant, a familiar hand squeezes a shot glass. Young Aejun slams it down in frustration. Jin Il-seok demands to know why he's giving up on getting Cheon Gumbo's money. But Yang Ajun screams back, telling him to go get hit again if he's so desperate. He reminds his friend of the brutal punch he took, a memory that still haunts him. He knows that if Cheon Gumbo got serious, even both of them together wouldn't stand a chance. The memory of that single bone-shattering blow is more than enough to keep him away. He insists they'd be destroyed, remembering the overwhelming difference in power. The two of them sit in silence, the mood completely sour. Because once that kind of fear is imprinted on someone, it doesn't just disappear. But their pity party is interrupted by the buzz of a phone. Yang Aejun looks over as Jin Il-seok wonders who it could be. He reveals it's a message from Cheon Gumbo, using his old, hateful nickname. Yang Aejun reads the message, which summons them to his house immediately. Jin Il-seok explodes in anger, furious that Cheon Gumbo is acting like their boss. But Yang Aejun points out the most important part of the message, an offer of money. And soon after, they stand in awe before his new luxury apartment, unable to believe their eyes. They're completely stunned by the apartment, realizing the rent alone is a fortune. But Cheon Gumbo cuts them off, telling them to stop gawking and get to the point. The two bullies can only grumble, annoyed by his sudden confidence. The commotion startles Lado-chan, who peeks out from its hiding spot. Yang Aejun erupts in laughter, mocking him for getting robbed by a woman. He continues his taunts until Jin Il-seok tells him to read the room. Because Cheon Gumbo is clenching his fists, his patience clearly wearing thin. Yang Aejun immediately panics, trying to insist he was just worried. Jin Il-seok quickly gets them back on track, confirming their mission is to recover the stolen cash. And Cheon Gumbo makes his offer. They'll get 20% of whatever they bring back. Jin Il-seok's eyes light up at the thought of the money, boasting that this is their specialty. Yang Aejun chimes in, suddenly claiming this is what friends and loyalty are all about. But Cheon Gumbo scoffs at the idea, reminding them they were never friends to begin with. They quickly brush off his comment, eager to know the total amount they're chasing. With a cold stare, Cheon Gumbo holds up 5 fingers, revealing the staggering sum of 500 million won. The two bullies can only stare in utter disbelief at the massive amount. The shock quickly wears off as one of them stomps his foot, declaring that Cheon Gumbo is no longer their friend. Instead, they both drop to the ground, proclaiming that from now on, he is their boss. They eagerly beg for the details, promising their undying loyalty in exchange for the job. And just like that, his former tormentors are kneeling at his feet, ready to do his bidding. Cheon Gumbo adjusts his glasses, ready to explain the details of their mission. Jin Il-seok is completely stunned, noodles hanging from his mouth as he repeats her name. He can't believe the woman who stole the money is the same Princess Ren from their high school. Yang Aejun is equally shocked, asking how Cheon Gumbo was even in contact with her. Our boy calmly explains that she was the one who reached out to him first through a direct message. He shows them the chat history, revealing she saw his viral video and decided to get in touch. Jin Il-sok can only mutter in jealousy as Yang A-jun looks on with a grim expression. But Yang A-jun quickly gets back to business, asking how she knew the money was in the closet. He's completely floored by the implication that Princess Ren actually came to this very house. The two bullies turn to face him, the full weight of the betrayal finally sinking in. He calmly explains that she even stayed the night at his apartment. The bullies' minds immediately conjure a fantasy of the two of them together. They erupt in a synchronized scream of pure, unadulterated jealousy. Later, as they eat, they wallow in a sense of complete and utter defeat. Yang A-jun clutches his head, unable to comprehend how Cheon Geumbo could have succeeded where he failed. But Jin Il-seok suddenly remembers seeing Princess Ren at the store recently with her boyfriend. The revelation that she has a boyfriend sends a shockwave through the room. Jin Il-seok explains that every time she came in, she was buying expensive gifts for him. A new theory forms in their minds. She approaches wealthy men, only to take their money and spend it all on the person she's actually dating. The two bullies erupt in fury, demanding they report her to the police once the money is recovered. Cheon Geumbo asks for confirmation, and Jin Il-seok eagerly adds that she was with her boyfriend. A slow, calculating smile spreads across Cheon Geumbo's face, a plan already forming in his mind. We then cut to a flashback, to a man screaming in a fit of rage. He's her father, and the flashback reveals a childhood of brutal, unexplained beatings. When her mother was away, the violence was directed solely at her, and when her mother was home, she became the target of his rage instead. The young girl could only watch in terror, unable to ask for help from her own abused mother. One day, fearing for her life, she hid in the bathroom and finally called the police. She heard the officers arrive, believing her father would finally be arrested. But all she heard was laughter from the other side of the door. A moment later, an officer finally opened the door, confirming her identity. But instead of helping, he just patronized her, telling her to listen to her father. He then turned to the man, giving him a gentle warning not to be too harsh. Her father just gave a smug, insincere smile, promising to be more careful, and the moment the police were gone, he came for her again, belt in hand. She was born into a world where there was no one to save her. When he was finally tired of hitting her, he'd send her out to buy him more alcohol. At just 9 years old, she was already ashamed of her own bruised reflection. So before going into the store, she would try to fix her hair and wipe her face, hiding the evidence. She would force a smile, trying to look like a child who hadn't been beaten. The store owner would just look at her with a sad, knowing expression. She'd take her change with a cheerful thank you, her performance never wavering. Once outside, she was just relieved that the store lady didn't seem to notice the marks. From that point on, she avoided her father by staying outside all day. She would play at the neighborhood playground, waiting until he finally fell asleep. And at the same time every day, a young boy would always pass by. He seemed so happy about something, always smiling as he walked. A little while later, that same boy would return with his older sister. They would laugh and share snacks, a perfect picture of a loving family. Unlike her, he seemed so happy, vowing to protect his sister in their parents' place. But one night, a storm rolled in, trapping her at the playground. She shivered in the cold, waiting for her father to finally fall asleep. She could only hope that he would pass out early tonight. But her hiding spot was discovered by her furious father. The young girl could only stare back in absolute terror. He grabbed her by the hair, enraged that she was hiding from him. He dragged her out into the rain, screaming at her for being outside all day. He threw her to the ground, blaming her for forcing him to come out in the storm. She then remembered that he always bought alcohol from the nearby bar when it rained. She blames herself for her own stupidity, believing she's being beaten because she's dumb. She wonders if things would have been different if she were just a little bit smarter. If she had just acted differently, maybe she could have been like that boy and his sister. Maybe her own family could have lived a happy life, full of smiles. She had never cried from her father's beatings before, but on this day a deep sadness finally broke through. But her tears only make him angrier, questioning what right she has to cry. He screams at her to stop, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. But just as he's about to strike her again, a young Cheon Geumbo appears out of nowhere, striking the man with his own umbrella. The father can only clutch his head in pain, stunned by the sudden attack. The father roars in fury, demanding to know who this kid is. But Cheon Geumbo stands his ground, demanding to know why an adult is hurting a child. For the young girl, this was the very first time that anyone had ever stepped in to save her. But in the present, Princess Ren lies on the floor, bruised and defeated. She's been tied to a pipe, left alone in a cold, tiled room. Her body aches as she whispers of her hunger and thirst. Her hands are bound and she's too weak to even try to escape. She wonders if this is how her story is going to end. But her final thoughts are not for herself, but for the mother she'll be leaving behind. She believes that rather than suffering, it might just be better to die. But her despair is interrupted by the sight of a figure standing in the doorway. Her eyes widen, a sudden flicker of disbelief in her gaze. Because peering through the curtain is none other than Cheon Gumbo. She can only stare back, completely stunned that he's actually found her. A single tear rolls down her cheek as her will to live suddenly returns. And with all her remaining strength, she begs him to help her. We then flash back a few hours, to the hospital where his sister is recovering. Her old manager is causing a scene, demanding to see her despite being told she can't have visitors. He casually dismisses the hospital's rules, laughing off a warning about smoking inside. He shoves the nurse's hand away, completely ignoring her request to leave. His anger boils over as he grabs the nurse, threatening her for getting in his way. He shoves her aside, determined to get into the room no matter what. The nurse frantically calls for security as he just laughs, taking a drag from his vape. But as he turns to enter the room, he finds his path blocked by a tall, imposing figure in a suit. The manager can only stammer, wondering who this person is. It's Cheon Gyeombo, who calmly informs him that his sister isn't taking visitors. The manager tries to play it off, claiming he's just a worried supervisor. But Cheon Gyeombo grabs him by the arm, feigning concern for his sister's well-being. He thanks the man for moving aside as he effortlessly shoves him out of the way. The manager's face contorts in shock, unable to comprehend the sudden show of strength. He's sent sprawling to the floor, where he whines about his neck and threatens to use his influence. A moment later, Cheon Gyeombo holds out a single piece of candy in his palm. He offers it to his sister, who asks if this is supposed to be a hospital gift. We then see him dragging the manager away by his collar, as the man protests that he even brought a present. But Cheon Gyeombo just smiles, as his sister's voiceover questions if he just pulled something random from his pocket. He tells her to throw the candy away, worried about her blood sugar, but she playfully says she'll throw it in her mouth. As she talks on the phone about the manager's sudden departure, Cheon Gyeombo unwraps the candy for himself. She then questions if a 24-hour bodyguard is really necessary, as her brother stands guard by the window. He tells his sister that the cost is worth it for his own peace of mind. He quickly ends the call, saying he's busy buying something important. Turning to a salesman, he asks if the purchase is complete, because a brand new luxury car is waiting for him, ready to be driven off the lot. Later, Jin Il-seok praises his new boss's clever thinking. He's amazed that Cheon Gyeombo knew to look up Princess Ren's membership information. It gave them her address, phone number, and car details in one go. But Cheon Gyeombo reminds him that they used the same illegal method to find his apartment. As Jin Il-seok stammers an excuse, Cheon Gyeombo spots their target on the street. It's Princess Ren's boyfriend standing on a corner, completely unaware he's being watched. Jin Il-seok complains about the giant, embarrassing ribbon on the front of the car. He's mortified by the unwanted attention they're getting from passers-by. Yang Aejun ignores him, asking Cheon Gyeombo for an update on their investigation. Our boy explains that he hired a private detective to pull Princess Ren's call records. He discovered that the most frequently called number was also registered under her name. Yang Aejun is stunned, wondering why it wasn't under her boyfriend's name. Cheon Gyeombo asks why she would buy a luxury car on a full loan when she doesn't even have a license. He reveals that the car and her apartment are all in her name, with nothing tied to her boyfriend. With a cold smile, he explains that the man they're looking for is a wanted petty criminal with a long list of minor charges. Jin Il-seok mocks the boyfriend's criminal past as Cheon Gyeombo confirms he's tracking their location. He explains that both phones are registered to her, and the GPS points directly to her house. Yang Aejun grimly concludes that the two of them must be living together. Jin Il-seok laments that the school's princess ended up with such a petty criminal. Cheon Gyeombo buckles his seatbelt, ready to head straight to her apartment. But Jin Il-seok can't help but question his new boss's choice of a domestic car. He even points out the plastic still covering the brand new seats. Yang Aejun explains that this was the only car available to drive off the lot that very morning. Cheon Gyeombo is stunned, realizing he came straight from the dealership to pick them up. He can only stare in disbelief, comparing the purchase to a casual trip to the supermarket. Jin Il-seok can only mutter in jealousy at the sheer scale of his new boss's wealth. He asks if Princess Ren's car is really a Porsche, a question Cheon Gyeombo confirms. And just ahead, they spot the very same red luxury car parked by the curb. Cheon Gyeombo calmly asks if they're wearing their seatbelts before slamming his foot on the accelerator. The car rockets forward, sending the two bullies flying back in their seats. They both scream in terror, demanding to know what he's doing, because he's aiming their brand new car directly at the parked Porsche. The bullies can only watch in horror as their boss barrels toward the expensive vehicle. but Cheon-gumbo's expression is cold and determined as he braces for the impact. Yang Aejun throws up an arm to shield himself, completely unprepared for the crash. The two cars collide with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Meanwhile, Princess Ren's boyfriend is distracted by a game on his phone. He celebrates a small victory in an online gambling match, but his moment is interrupted by an incoming text message. It's a picture of the crash, with a polite but taunting message to come outside. The tattooed man leaps to his feet in a blind rage, vowing to kill whoever touched his car. Outside, the three of them wait as Jin Il-seok wonders if they'll get a bounty for turning him in. But Yang Aejun reminds him that petty criminals don't have bounties, just as their target comes storming down the stairs. The man is armed with a knife, a sight that catches all three of them completely off guard. He glares at them, his weapon gleaming, ready for a fight. The two bullies recoil in terror, completely unprepared for a real weapon. Princess Rin's boyfriend roars, his face a mask of pure, unhinged fury. He charges up the stairs, vowing to end them for what they did to his car. The bullies can only whisper in fear, realizing their taunt worked a little too well. But their panic turns to confusion as they notice the apartment door swinging shut. It slowly closes, threatening to trap them in the hallway with the armed man. But just before it locks, a hand shoots out to stop it from closing. Jin Il-seok shoves his way inside as Yang Aejun praises his quick thinking. The three of them scramble into the apartment, seeking safety from the confrontation. The door slams shut just as the enraged boyfriend reaches the top of the stairs. The tattooed man cautiously peers up the stairs, wondering where they vanished. He can only stare in confusion, trying to process what just happened. Inside, the bullies realize with dawning horror that the door's latch is broken. Jin Il-seok panics, knowing there's nothing to stop the man from getting inside. Cheon-gumbo tells them to forget the door and focus on finding the money and Princess Ren. The three of them quickly begin to search the small apartment, but their search is cut short as the bullies struggle to hold the door shut. Outside, the enraged boyfriend tries to force his way in, wondering why it's locked. He begins ramming his shoulder against the door, his fury growing with every second. And with a final shove, he bursts inside, demanding to know what they're doing in his home. The two bullies frantically try to hold the door shut. A knife blade suddenly flashes past Jin Il-seok's face. The enraged boyfriend shoves his arm through the gap, trying to stab them. The bullies recoil in terror, realizing he's not bluffing. But Cheon-gumbo just watches calmly as they slam the door on the man's arm. They manage to trap him, but the knife is still wedged in the doorframe. They wonder if they can pull hard enough to snap the blade. But the boyfriend continues to struggle, vowing to end them all. The bullies look back in desperation, asking their new boss for orders. Cheon-gumbo simply tells them to open it. He gives them a simple plan: open the door on 3 and then get out of the way. With a cold, steady voice, he begins the countdown. The two bullies can only exchange a terrified glance, bracing for what's to come. Outside, the enraged boyfriend prepares to charge, vowing to end them all. On the count of 3, they throw the door open and dive to the side. The man stumbles into the room, completely caught off guard by their sudden move. But Cheon-gumbo is waiting for him, now holding a small pistol. He calmly tells the man that's as far as he goes, his aim perfectly steady. And without a moment of hesitation, he fires the weapon. The bullet strikes the knife with perfect precision, sending it flying from the man's hand. The boyfriend chokes on the gas, stunned that he was just taken down by a toy. He lunges forward in a blind rage, but Cheon-gumbo is already moving to intercept him. With a nearby frying pan, he smacks the knife away for a second time. The gas gun clatters to the floor, its purpose now fulfilled. The boyfriend glares at him, furious at being treated like a joke. He screams that he'll kill them all as he charges forward once more. But as he swings wildly, the bullies realize their boss has vanished. They're left completely alone to face the enraged criminal. He screams for them to show themselves as they cower in fear. But from behind, Cheon-gumbo grabs his arm, stopping the attack in its tracks. He twists the man's arm with surprising strength. The boyfriend screams in agony as Cheon-gumbo calls out to his new lackeys. He orders Jin Il-seok and Yang Aejun to get to work. Yang Aejun can only stare, stunned by his new boss's sudden brutality. Later, back at the apartment, a pot of ramen boils on the stove. Yang Aejun awkwardly stirs the pot, admitting he has a question. He asks why Cheon-gumbo didn't just handle the situation by himself. After all, with his new strength, he wonders why their boss even bothered to call them. Cheon-gumbo looks at them in disbelief, asking if they've never seen a popular anime. The two bullies just stare back, completely lost by his nerdy reference. He explains that raw power is meaningless if it doesn't hit its mark. He knows his own strength, but admits his speed and accuracy are terrible in a real fight. So if an unexpected situation arises, he'll give them a specific signal. And at that moment, he needs them to grab the target with everything they've got. And back in the present, the two bullies spring into action, restraining the enraged man. Jin Il-seok struggles to hold on to his tattooed arm, while Yang Aejun grabs him from the other side, both of them straining. They scream for their new boss as the man thrashes wildly, trying to break free. And with his target immobilized, Cheon-gyumbo sees his opening and prepares to strike. The boyfriend's face contorts in shock as the blow connects. A single punch, fueled by a lifetime of pent-up rage. The force of it sends the tattooed man flying backward. His eyes roll back as he's knocked completely unconscious. He slumps to the floor, defeated in a single hit. The two bullies can only stare in awe at the one-shot knockout. Yang Aejun praises their boss's coolness, while Jin Il-seok urges them to hurry. Cheon-gyumbo immediately takes charge, ordering them to find the money and tie the man up. Jin Il-seok confidently explains that he knows exactly how criminals on the run operate. He peeks under the furniture, quickly spotting the bag where the cash is most likely hidden. But as Cheon-gyumbo searches the balcony, he finds Princess Ren lying on the floor. The bullies are still tying up the boyfriend when their boss's discovery sends a chill down their spines. Jin Il-seok erupts in a panic, screaming that there's a dead body on the balcony. Yang Aejun freezes, horrified by the thought that the boyfriend actually killed her. The two of them argue, both too terrified to go and see for themselves. But Yang Aejun finally works up the courage to investigate, dreading what he'll find. He pulls back the curtain, his eyes widening at the sight of Princess Rin's still form. He can only stare in absolute shock, completely frozen by the scene. But a closer look reveals her bruised and battered face, her eyes wide open. Tears begin to stream down her cheeks. A silent plea for help. Cheon-gyumbo steps forward, calling out her name in disbelief. The two bullies scream in terror, convinced they've just stumbled upon a dead body. But Cheon-gyumbo calmly corrects them, explaining that she's only fainted. He realizes she must have been confined here and tells them to get her to a hospital. Yang Aejun takes charge, telling the others to find the money while he looks for something to cut the ropes. But Jin Il-seok is one step ahead, presenting a box cutter and the bag of cash he's already found. Soon after, an ambulance races down the highway, with their brand new car following close behind. Inside, Jin Il-seok looks over the recovered cash, noting that barely any of it seems to have been spent. Yang Aejun explains that large cash transactions are risky, which is why criminals need to launder their money. He continues, explaining that any large deposit triggers an investigation, a concept Cheon-gyumbo has never heard of. Cheon-gyumbo can only repeat the words, completely lost. Yang Aejun explains that if he can't prove the source of his funds, he'll be arrested for having illegal money. A horrifying realization dawns on him as he remembers depositing money from Lotto-chan directly into his account. He used it to pay for his own apartment and his sister's new home. Every single major purchase was made through a direct bank transfer. And if he goes to prison, he won't be able to take Lotto-chan with him. He remembers the second condition for the wallet to stop working. The mysterious man's warning echoes in his mind. If he goes 30 days without taking any money, the wallet's power will vanish forever. And with that, Cheon-gyumbo realizes he is completely and utterly screwed. He realizes that what Yang Aejun said was only half right. After doing some research, he learns that small transactions aren't unconditionally risky. But investigations are launched for suspicious transactions like illegal funds or money laundering, especially when excessive amounts of cash are deposited by a single person. In other words, his exact situation is a massive red flag for the authorities. As the bullies bicker in the car, he learns that all transactions are shared with government agencies. The full weight of his catastrophic mistake finally hits him, and then he remembers the mysterious man's warning, a detail he'd completely forgotten. He recalls the man telling him something incredibly important about the wallet. The cash from the wallet beast cannot be deposited at regular banks or ATMs. He remembers the man explaining the only way to deposit the wallet beast's cash was to use a specific ATM on the 28th floor of the gloomy building in Gangnam. At the time, he just thought it was another strange condition of the deal. He recalls the man mentioning it right after explaining the 3 rules. Now, as he follows the map on his phone, he realizes how strange it all was. He arrives at the building, and a facial scanner grants him immediate entry. He's already registered in the system, and the elevator takes him straight to the 28th floor. He cautiously peeks out as the elevator doors slide open. On the completely empty floor, a single ATM stands alone in the vast space. It's an unnerving sight. Just one machine in the middle of a massive vacant room. It's as if the entire building was constructed for this one purpose. He remembers the man's final, crucial piece of advice. The money from the wallet beast is completely tax-free and untraceable. Cheon-gumbo finally understands that as long as he follows the rules, there's no limit to his spending. He didn't realize it at the time, but it's a terrifyingly attractive condition. The man offered him the illusion of freedom, but at the end of that path, there's always a trap. The more he gets addicted to the money, the more he will lose something precious. His mind flashes back to a different time when he stood up for a helpless child. The back of a boy who was willing to fight for what was right without a second thought. It's a memory that she can never, ever forget. Because the boy who tried to save her was brutally beaten by her own father. She was terrified he would die, but her body was completely frozen in fear. The thought of stepping in only filled her with the dread of being beaten herself. But just then, his sister arrived, screaming his name in a panic. She charged forward without a second of hesitation, and with a desperate scream, she sank her teeth into the man's arm. He tried to fight her off as Cheon-gyeombo could only watch in horror. The sister bites down with all her might, tears streaming down her face. Inspired by their courage, the young girl grabs his other arm and does the same. Their combined efforts finally bring the man down as a crowd gathers in the rain. With so many witnesses to the commotion, and the sight of the two injured children, the situation could no longer be ignored. Her father is finally dragged away by the police, still trying to blame the kids for his actions. At the station, her mother finally finds the courage to confess the years of abuse. And when the officers see the bruises on both of them, they finally understand the horrifying truth. Her father was arrested, but his violent outburst continued in his cell, until he was finally silenced for good by another inmate. When she heard the news of her father's death, the first thing she felt was an eerie sense of relief. She reflects on how he got what he deserved in prison, and realizes that if he hadn't been arrested, he would have eventually killed both of them. After the cremation, her mother holds her tightly in their new, safer home. She apologizes for not protecting her sooner, vowing to live only for her daughter, Jurin, from now on. With tears in her eyes, she promises to devote her entire life to making up for the past. She tells Jurin to find a good man and be happy, but the young girl insists she'll stay with her mother forever. And from that day forward, her mother dedicated her entire life to her daughter's happiness. She gave Jurin the best of everything: good clothes, delicious food, and a proper education. She never hesitated to spend her entire salary on her daughter, even while neglecting her own needs. Her mother's efforts paid off, and at her new school she was treated like a princess. So much so that everyone mistook her for the daughter of a wealthy family. But she never forgot the boy who saved her, sometimes returning to the old playground in hopes of seeing him. But year after year, he never appeared. Until one day in high school, when she heard a familiar name called out in the hallway. She turned just in time to see a student being brutally bullied. And to her horror, she realized the victim was Cheon-gyeombo, the boy from all those years ago. Watching him being so helplessly tormented left her completely stunned. She could only stare, unable to process the scene before her. But her shock wasn't because his appearance had changed, or because the brave boy she remembered had disappeared. It was because she wanted to help that child, but her body just wouldn't move. She finally understood how difficult it was to help someone in pain. Another student tries to intervene, only to be shoved aside with ease, and she was completely shocked, realizing Cheon-gyeombo had done that very thing at just 9 years old. Far from helping him, she never even spoke to him, and soon she turned 20 and got her first boyfriend. His name was Ji-hagen, the same man from the apartment. In the beginning, he was endlessly sweet and devoted, and they even went on dates to amusement parks. But he soon moved into her studio, and his true violent nature began to show. He would scream at her for not having money, but she could never bring herself to tell her mother. She knew her mom would only blame herself, believing her daughter had inherited her own tragic fate. He would demand impossible sums of money, a cycle of violence she hid from her mother. She was completely trapped, knowing that trying to leave would only make the beatings worse. And in her despair, she believed that death was the only way to escape him. But Ji-hagen offered her another way out, a twisted form of blackmail. He promised to leave her alone if she could bring him a few 100 million won, a staggering amount that left her completely and utterly hopeless. The one thing she needed more than anything was money, because she believed that with enough cash, she could finally escape this living hell. But as she sat in the dark, she had no idea how to get that kind of fortune. Her work as an influencer only brought in sponsorships, not the cash she so desperately needed. She'd even looked into loans, but her boyfriend had already maxed out everything in her name. Worn out and with no solution in sight, she was just mindlessly scrolling through her phone. That's when she stumbled upon a viral video of a man in an incredibly expensive outfit. And to her absolute shock, she recognized the face as her old classmate, Cheon-gyeombo. She had no idea what happened to him after graduation, but one thing was certain. Right now, Cheon-gumbo had an unbelievable amount of money. Her mind flashed back to the timid boy she remembered from high school, the one who was relentlessly tormented by bullies in the hallway. She reasoned that the boy who couldn't even fight back might be an easy person to get money from. With no time to worry about morals or conscience, she decided to send him a message. She's relieved that a bit of makeup is all it takes to hide the bruises. She remembers being hit that very morning and how the promise of money was the only thing that saved her. But she tells herself it's fine as she puts on a confident smile and walks to meet him. Ever since she was a child, she's had to smile through the pain. She's always been an expert at acting like nothing was wrong. And just as she expected, Cheon-gumbo was a complete softie. Just a single touch from her was enough to make him shake. She could feel just how nervous he was as they walked together. Normally, she'd be terrified of her boyfriend's angry messages. But on this day, she wasn't afraid because she was sure her plan would work. She was certain that if she just played her part, Cheon-gumbo would give her the money she needed. But his sudden question about her bruises caught her completely off guard. She never expected to hear such genuine words of concern. She tried to pretend that everything was fine. But throughout the entire meal, her hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't because she was embarrassed about being caught, but because her own actions felt so unbearably humiliating. She remembered how she couldn't even help him back in high school, and how she was too afraid to even speak a single word to him. And now, my classmate from all those years ago is still trying to help me. She realizes that someone who grew up with so much love is just different, offering their heart without hesitation. And as she looks at him, she can't help but feel a deep sense of envy. But her memory cuts to a much darker scene, as her boyfriend throws food at her in a fit of rage. He had found the restaurant bill from her date with Cheon-gumbo, furious that she'd spent so much. She tried to explain it was an investment to get more money, but he just demanded she give it to him instead. When he grabbed a knife, she knew he was dead serious, and she honestly thought she was going to die. So she threw her phone and wallet aside and ran for her life. Her only thought was to get to Cheon-gumbo's place, a desperate flight through the city streets. She knew his apartment was a high-end building, believing its security would be her only salvation. She believed that even if he found out where she was, this was the one place he could never break into. But her relief is shattered by a horrifying realization. She was far too careless. In her panic, she had used Cheon-gumbo's laptop to log into her messenger and contact her mother. But her boyfriend had intercepted the chat, pretending to be her and tricking her mom into giving him their address. She can only stare in terror, realizing he's now targeting her mother, and she has no way to warn her. Just then, a new notification pops up on the screen. It's a message from Ji Ha-geun, who saw that she was logged in on a computer. He sends another message, a picture of his hand on a steering wheel, followed by a picture of a knife, with a chilling message that he's on his way to her mother's house. A raw, guttural scream of pure rage and terror rips through her. She frantically tries to figure out what to do, realizing that calling the police would only lead to revenge. She knows she has to handle this on her own, without ever letting her mother find out. But as she looks toward the closet, she struggles to find a solution. She throws open the doors, vowing that she can't let this suffering reach her mother. And she realizes that if she's going to stop him, she's going to need money. So she sends him a message, telling him she has the 500 million won he demanded. And back in her own apartment, she dumps the stolen cash onto the floor. She stands over her boyfriend, asking if he's finally satisfied. She gives him the money they agreed on and tells him to get out of her house for good. She demands that he take the money and never show his face again. But Ji Ha-geun just erupts in a fit of deranged laughter. He realizes that she was able to get 500 million won this easily, and questions why she ever dared to act tough with him before. He now sees her as an endless source of cash, vowing to never let her go. He grabs her face and she can only stare back in stunned silence. Her expression shifts to one of pure, unadulterated terror. He continues his maniacal laughter, his plan already set in motion, and with a twisted grin, he threatens to pay another visit to her mother. He grabs her by the hair, telling her she should have been this obedient from the very beginning. He tells her that she will never, ever escape him. Her consciousness slowly begins to return, as a bright light cuts through the darkness, revealing the sterile ceiling of a hospital room. She lies in a hospital bed covered in bruises from her ordeal. But she jolts upright, startling Cheon-gumbo, who was watching over her. He tries to calm her down, explaining that the doctor ordered her to rest. But she's in a complete panic, screaming that her mother is in danger. She knows that Ji Ha-geun will go after her mother, just as Cheon-gumbo grabs her shoulder. He tells her to calm down, his steady gaze finally getting through to her. He tells her that it won't happen anymore, and that she can finally relax. because by now Ji-hagen is already being dealt with. We see the man curled up in a freshly dug hole, bruised and terrified. He looks up from his makeshift grave, begging for his life. He promises to do anything they say if they just spare him. With tears streaming down his face, he pleads with them not to end him. But the two bullies just shove him back down, mocking his pathetic cries. Young Agent asks if he has any idea why he's in this situation. The man can only stammer that he doesn't know, as Jin Il-seok looks down in disgust. But as the first shovel of dirt hits him, he screams that it must be because of the money he borrowed. Jin Il-seok raises a shovel, telling him to try again as he offers to pay them back double. The man screams in terror, a different memory finally surfacing. He confesses to scamming people with gift cards, now offering to pay 100 times more. But young Aejun just tells his friend to hurry up and bury him, saying their boss is hungry. They begin to throw dirt on him as he screams for his life, his apologies lost in the night. Young Aejun lights a cigarette, calmly informing him that no one is coming to save him. He gives the man one final warning. If he somehow survives, he is to remember this moment. He then asks if he knows Princess Ren, explaining this is his punishment for ever messing with her. With a cold stare, he warns him to never even think about going near her again, because if she ever catches sight of him by accident, they won't be so merciful next time. He then adds that if he ever comes back, his body will be buried in 2 separate pieces. And as his screams echo through the mountains, the bully's work is finally done. Cheon Gyumbo explains that he saw her chat history and knew she'd taken the 500 million, but at the time, recovering the stolen cash was far less important than his sister's health. He tried to ignore it, opening his browser to focus on his new mission, but even there he found more traces of her desperate situation. Her search history was a horrifying list of queries about revenge killings and escaping her abuser. He tells her that anyone who saw that would have done the exact same thing to help. With a gentle smile, he insists that she doesn't need to thank him for what he did. But his simple act of kindness is too much for her to handle, and she breaks down completely. He panics at the sight of her tears, asking if she's hurt somewhere. She can only apologize, overwhelmed that he would help her after everything she did. She calls herself pathetic compared to him, but he just looks back in utter confusion, because his only thought is how incredibly beautiful she is, even with tears streaming down her face. But their emotional moment is interrupted by the buzz of his phone. He looks down at a message from his 2 new employees, who have sent a picture confirming that her ex-boyfriend has been properly planted. Princess Ren looks up, her expression shifting as she sees him on his phone. She suddenly grabs his arm, vowing to pay back the 500 million won she took no matter what. But Cheon Gyumbo just blushes, insisting that he's already gotten back more than enough interest. He explains that he went through her ex-boyfriend's phone and found he was living on illegal gambling sites. Because of cash deposit limits, he barely spent any of the money, instead using it for online games. But to everyone's surprise, the man actually managed to win 1.5 times what he bet. Cheon Gyumbo explains that the winnings were sent to an account under Princess Rin's name. So with a triumphant smile, he simply withdrew every last one. He muses that for an illegal site, they were surprisingly honest about paying out. He also found the rest of the stolen cash, meaning he actually recovered more than she took. And with a gentle smile, he tells her they can just call it even for what she did. Princess Rin can only look back, tears welling in her eyes at his incredible kindness. But she refuses, insisting she will repay him as they share a fist bump. Sometime later, Cheon Gumbo takes his sister out to a small cafe. She sips her juice, asking if the desserts he bought will be enough for him. He enjoys the fancy treat, but she explains she can only eat pre-packaged food from the hospital. But she's just happy to be outside for the first time in a long while. Feeling guilty that he's the only one eating, she calls over an employee for help. The woman asks for assistance with something, as the owner isn't around. Cheon Gyumbo quickly gets up, telling his sister he'll be right back. He walks over to the counter, and the employee seems quite impressed by him. He then says he needs to use the restroom, but she points out that it's located outside. A sudden panic flashes across his face as he insists they go together, asking her to wait. He tells the employee he can go by himself, asking her to help his sister instead. And so, Cheon Eun-hwa makes her way down a quiet alley toward the restroom. She thinks about the harsh side effects of her treatment, a constant and difficult struggle. But as she walks, a van suddenly screeches to a halt right beside her. She looks up, her eyes wide with surprise and a flicker of fear. Back inside, Cheon Gumbo returns to the table with a polite smile for the employee. But as he wonders what's taking his sister so long, a terrified scream cuts through the air. He looks outside just in time to see a tattooed man trying to force his sister into the back of a van. The man grabs her by her hospital gown, his intentions horrifyingly clear. Cheon-gumbo bolts out of the cafe as the kidnappers slam the door and speed away. The kidnappers panic as Cheon-gumbo blocks their path, one of them screaming to just run him over. But he stands his ground, refusing to let the van escape with his sister. With a determined roar, he braces himself for the head-on collision. The kidnappers can only watch in horror, realizing he's not going to move. The van slams into him, sending him flying over the hood of the vehicle. Inside, his sister screams in terror as the windshield shatters from the impact. She frantically grabs the driver, trying to stop them from getting away. The van swerves down the street as Cheon-gumbo struggles to get back to his feet. He glares after the vehicle, vowing that they won't get away with this. He breaks into a desperate sprint, spotting a delivery driver on a scooter nearby. He yanks the terrified driver off the scooter, offering a frantic apology. He leaves the man on the pavement, screaming that he'll pay him back as he speeds away. The driver can only watch in utter confusion as his scooter is commandeered. Cheon-gumbo races down the street, his sister's name a desperate roar on his lips. We then flash back to earlier that morning as he touches his chin, realizing his acne is completely gone. He wonders if it's his new mold-free home, his better diet, or the expensive lotion he's been using. With Lotto-chan perched on his head, he snaps a selfie, a newfound confidence in his eyes. He strikes a playful pose, joking that it would be a problem if he got any more handsome. But his moment of vanity is shattered by an incoming call from his sister's bodyguard. He answers, only to hear the horrifying news that Cheon Yunhwa has been kidnapped. The bodyguard's words confirm his worst fear. His sister has been taken. He blames himself for the failure, his wrecked scooter a symbol of his mistake. He explains that he was in pursuit but crashed his bike, losing the kidnapper's trail. He's already called the police but knows that waiting around isn't an option. But as Cheon-gumbo listens, his panic gives way to a cold, chilling calm. He simply asks for the last known coordinates of the van. With the information secured, he prepares to move. Because in his mind, these men have just made a fatal mistake. The bodyguard's regret echoes in his mind, a mistake he refuses to repeat. He remembers a time when he secretly worked a delivery job, all for his sister's sake. He was just one delivery away from a small bonus, a simple mission on a cold day. But a routine emergency alert for a missing person suddenly caught his attention. He continued on his route, hoping for a smooth end to his shift. That's when he spotted her, an elderly woman wandering alone in the snow. She was clutching a lunchbox, determined to bring a meal to her son. And in an instant, he realized she was the very same woman from the police alert. He immediately stopped, gave her his own jacket for warmth, and called the authorities. He watched as she was taken to safety, knowing his delivery was now hopelessly late. But instead of anger, the customer met him with kindness, praising him for his good deed. He may have lost the bonus, but a few days later, the grandmother's family arrived at his door, and they gave him 300,000 won in department store gift cards as a thank you. But his sister eventually found out about his secret job and was furious, forcing him to quit, so to find someone faster than the police. He knows he needs to tap into the city's vast network of delivery drivers. We see a group of drivers waiting outside a restaurant, complaining about the long wait times. One of them grumbles that he's been waiting 15 minutes for an order that still isn't ready, but his complaint is cut short by a notification on his phone. His eyes go wide as he reads the urgent message. The other drivers are just as stunned, their phones buzzing with the same alert. It's a desperate plea from Cheon-gumbo, offering a 100 million won reward for any information on the van. The message is simple: 100 million won in cash for any information leading to the van. And just like that, the entire city's delivery network springs into action. They abandon their routes, their only focus now on the massive reward. For 100 million won, an army of riders floods the streets searching for their target. Meanwhile, in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Seoul, inside a closed-down karaoke bar, another man, one of the kidnappers, sees the same message and can't believe his eyes. He's not the only one, as the delivery driver from the cafe is also being held captive. The kidnappers tell him to wait outside if he wants his share of the money, but the tattooed man scoffs, annoyed by his boss's arrogance over a small payout. He decides to betray his crew, siding with the man offering the 100 million won reward. Inside the karaoke room, Cheon Eunhwa glares defiantly as her captor tries to speak to her. It's her old manager, who casually dismisses the kidnapping as a simple chat. He gives her a fake offer to leave, a smug and untrustworthy smile on his face. But she immediately calls his bluff, standing up to walk out of the room. Her path is blocked by a large, imposing man standing guard at the door. A moment later, another woman is wheeled into the room, looking frail and wearing a mask. Cheon Eunhwa is stunned, recognizing her former colleague who also had leukemia. The woman Ji-hai asks her to sit down and talk for a moment. In the same room, the tattooed kidnapper who saw the reward message casually scrolls through his phone. The large man continues to stand guard, his presence ensuring no one can escape. The manager takes a long drag from his vape, completely at ease. He exhales slowly, looking over at Cheon Eunhwa and her former colleague. She asks if signing this settlement agreement will get both her and Ji-hai some consolation money. But she's immediately suspicious, wondering why the company would offer anything now that Ji-hai has already quit. The manager tries to patronize her, telling her to just accept the company's goodwill without question. But she sees right through him, accusing him of using Ji-hai's situation to manipulate her. She points a finger, calling him out for his despicable tactics. He leaps to his feet in a rage as Ji-hai tries to de-escalate the situation. But her former colleague can only look on with a desperate plea in her eyes. Her mind flashes back to her own time in the hospital, a memory of when her own diagnosis began. Ji-hai explains the crushing financial reality of her illness, where every single thing costs money. She remembers apologizing to her husband, trapped by her unstable medical condition. He tried to comfort her, but their family's income had been cut in half by her sickness. The mounting hospital bills threatened to consume their entire remaining salary. They had to pull their children from their classes just to make ends meet. And soon they were forced to look for a smaller apartment to cut down on rent. Every month they fell deeper into debt, and she felt like a sinner for causing it all. She tells Cheon Eunhwa that when she was healthy, she never understood how a single illness could financially crush an entire family. She remembers the simple, happy life they had before everything fell apart. She confesses that she's given up on her own transplant. Cheon Eunhwa is horrified, knowing that without it, death is a certainty. But Ji-hai explains that even with the transplant, there's no guarantee she'll survive. She believes the money should be spent on her family's future, not on a dying woman like her. She reveals the company offered her money if she could convince Cheon Eunhwa to sign the settlement. With a desperate look, she calls this the last thing she can do for her family. She then collapses to her knees, begging her former colleague for help. With tears streaming down her face, she pleads for her to just sign the agreement. Cheon Eunhwa can only stare, completely stunned by her friend's desperate sacrifice. Meanwhile, the tattooed kidnapper sends a message, confirming the 100 million won reward is real. The informant tries to downplay the situation, insisting it wasn't a real kidnapping and that his sister is unharmed. He sends the coordinates, telling Cheon Gyumbo to message him when he's close. The bodyguard asks if they should inform the police, worried that the tip could be a trap. But Cheon Gyumbo decides to confirm the location himself before making any other moves. The bodyguard sends a message, telling the informant to come out and meet them. The tattooed man waits outside, already dreaming of the new motorcycle he'll buy with the 100 million won. The bodyguard greets him from the driver's seat, his expression unreadable. But the informant is immediately confused by the sight of their brand new, completely wrecked car. The bodyguard confirms the money is real as Cheon Gyumbo steps out to face him. The man threatens to steal their car if they don't pay, but the bodyguard calmly says he'll just call the police. The informant is stunned, recognizing Cheon Gyumbo as the man who was hit by the van earlier. He tries to lead our boy away, but Cheon Gyumbo grabs him with a grip of solid steel, and with a single brutal punch, he sends the man's jaw into the back of his head. The informant goes flying backward, completely unconscious, as the bodyguard watches in shock. The bodyguard's glasses reflect the man's limp body, his mind struggling to process what he just saw. Cheon Gyumbo calmly asks how long it will take for the police to arrive. He cracks his knuckles, declaring that 10 minutes is more than enough time for what he has planned. Back in the karaoke room, the manager slides the settlement papers forward, hoping she's finally changed her mind. Ji-hai continues to plead from the floor as the other men watch, completely unconcerned. But Cheon Eunhwa's expression is resolute as she places her hand on the document. Her decision made. She picks up the pen, ready to sign away her rights. The manager smirks, convinced her stubbornness was just a waste of time. But her expression is one of cold, unwavering resolve. Just then, the bell on the front door jingles, announcing a new arrival. The kidnappers look over, completely caught off guard by the interruption, because Cheon Gyumbo has arrived, and the tattooed man immediately recognizes him. He tries to blame our boy for the crash, but his words are cut short by a powerful kick that sends him flying across the room. And at the same time, his sister delivers a kick of her own to the cowering manager. The man frantically pleads his innocence as Cheon Gyumbo looms over him. Cheon Gyumbo's eyes narrow as he recognizes the phone in the large man's hand. The kidnapper panics, realizing with dawning horror that he's holding Cheon Eunhwa's phone. He trembles under our boy's cold stare, stammering that he doesn't remember how he got it. With a pathetic smile, he tries to hand it back, hoping for a moment of mercy. But his apology is met with a brutal punch that connects with devastating force. The man is sent flying backward, embedding himself into the sofa as the manager watches in horror. Cheon-gyumbo realizes this is why he couldn't reach his sister, as the manager marvels at his incredible strength. He grabs the terrified manager, confirming his sister is here and ordering the man to lead the way. The two of them stand nervously at the end of the hall, their eyes fixed on a single door. The manager confirms that she's inside, but seems hesitant to approach. The manager explains that a large man is guarding the door, making it difficult to get inside. But the bodyguard tells him to go first, promising to clear a path for him. Inside, the manager slides the settlement papers forward, hoping she's finally changed her mind. Cheon Yunhwa looks down at the document, her expression unreadable as she picks up the pen. The tip of the pen hovers just above the signature line. The manager smirks, convinced her stubbornness was just a waste of time. But instead of signing, she snaps the pen in half, stunning the manager into silence. She stands up, declaring that this is going too far as Ji-hai apologizes from the floor. She holds up the document, insisting that what they're doing is wrong. Turning to Ji-hai, she explains that she's given it a lot of thought.
She explains that if she settles now, she could never rest in peace knowing another family might suffer.
Because with a single signature, she would be putting other people's children at risk. The manager just scoffs at their pathetic show, but Cheon Yunhwa sees the offer for the insult it is. She asks how little they must think of them to offer such a meaningless sum. With a surge of righteous anger, she crumples the settlement papers in her hands and throws the wad of paper right in the manager's face, telling him to forget it. He leaps to his feet in a rage, calling her completely insane for refusing. But she slams her hand on the table, calling him an idiot who can't do simple math. He screams back, reminding her that she's sick and jobless, asking if she thinks money just falls from the sky. He tells her to just take the money, but she stares back, ready to make a counteroffer of her own. She grabs the manager by the collar, declaring she won't sign for pocket change and demanding 10 billion won. But just then, the door bursts open and the guard can only stare in shock, because Cheon-gumbo has arrived and the manager is completely stunned to see him. He points at his sister, praising her for standing up for herself. He then tells her to keep holding the man, who can only demand to know who he is. But Cheon-gumbo just winds up for a punch, vowing that he'll never forgive him for touching his sister. The manager's face contorts in terror as the fist barrels toward him. The blow connects with a devastating, bone-shattering impact, and the man is sent flying backward across the room from the sheer force of the punch. His sister can only watch in disbelief as her brother sends the man sailing through the air. He lands the punch as his sister watches, completely stunned by his raw power. He immediately rushes to her side, frantically asking if she's been hurt. But she just scolds him for resorting to violence, questioning if he's lost his mind. She calls him a thug, reminding him how much she hates seeing people get hit. Just then, the bodyguard enters the room, finding the siblings in the middle of their argument. He calmly asks if she really hates violence, even when it's used to protect her. His question makes her pause, her anger suddenly shifting to concern. She rushes over to the bodyguard, remembering he was hit by the van and asking if he's hurt. But he just gives her a gentle smile, patting her head and brushing off her worries. The simple act of kindness is too much for her, and she breaks down in tears of relief. She clutches the bodyguard's shirt, crying that she thought he was hurt because of her. He tries to calm her down, but she's still frantically asking if he's bleeding anywhere. But it's Cheon-gyumbo who steps in to wipe her tears as the manager watches from the side. The manager's expression suddenly shifts to one of pure shock, because in a fit of rage he grabs a chair and lunges forward to attack. Cheon Yunhwa can only watch in horror, completely frozen. Ji-hai screams in terror as the makeshift weapon comes crashing down. Cheon Yunhwa's eyes widen, unable to look away from the sudden violence. But the bodyguard throws himself in front of her, taking the full force of the blow. He shields her with his own body, reminding her that she hates seeing people get hurt. She notices he's bleeding, but he just asks if it's okay to hit someone who isn't human. The manager roars back, now wearing a set of sharp claws on his fists. He screams that he'll end this in a single blow. But a moment later, he's lying on the floor, completely defeated. The bodyguard stands over him as Cheon-gumbo's narration reveals the man's name is Suho, and he's unbelievably strong. Suddenly, a panicked scream echoes through the room, because outside, the bodyguard has collapsed on the pavement. Cheon-gumbo explains that his sister wanted to handle the company's crimes by the book, but after consulting with experts, she realized a legal battle would take far too long. So instead, they decided to use their money to buy time, as we flash forward a few months later. Yang Aejun is on the phone, cheerfully announcing their arrival to his new boss. He lays on the flattery, insisting nothing is more important than a summons from Cheon Gumbo. Jin Il-seok then grabs the phone, eager to get his own share of brown-nosing in. He asks what the job is this time, while secretly signaling his friend to ask about their pay. But Yang A-jun kicks him away, scolding him for being too obvious about the money. On the other end of the line, Cheon Gumbo explains that he's almost there. Yang A-jun looks around asking for his exact location, but their expressions shift to confusion as they spot a familiar yet different figure approaching. Cheon Gumbo adjusts his glasses, his entire presence having changed, and they can only stare in disbelief, noticing he's lost a significant amount of weight. Yang A-jun and Jin Il-seok stare in surprise, finally understanding the reason for Cheon Gumbo's transformation. Cheon Gumbo explains that months of intense preparation have caused him to lose a significant amount of weight. He greets them with a confident wave, his new appearance radiating a powerful aura. Cheon Gumbo confidently declares that all his meticulous preparations are now complete. He reveals a community site post, an expose detailing his sister's industrial accident, kidnapping, and the company's coerced settlement. The post includes a grim photo of his sister's worn-out gas mask, highlighting the company's negligence in replacing vital equipment. He further exposes the company's aggressive tactics, showing screenshots of the general manager's harassing messages to his sick sister. The post even includes damning CCTV footage of his sister being forcibly taken by the company's men. Finally, he reveals the crumpled settlement agreement, proving the company's desperate attempt to silence her. Yang A-jun, holding his phone, questions if the lengthy post might be too much for public interest despite its explosive content. He points out the post's low engagement, despite its serious nature. But Cheon Gumbo explains, this is exactly why he needs their help as he leads them to their destination. The two bullies are confused as they follow him into a massive PC cafe. Jin Il-seok suddenly gets it, assuming their job is to spread the post across the internet. But Cheon Gumbo quickly shuts him down, explaining they don't understand the online ecosystem. He lectures them on how difficult it is to make a post go viral, with many sites having strict rules. He knows that just spamming the link will get it buried, a fact he's already accounted for. With a confident smile, he reveals he's already purchased hundreds of established high-activity accounts. But he then clarifies that their job isn't to do the posting themselves, because he's already hired an entire army of people to do it for them. An army of typists gets to work, their fingers flying across the keyboards. They click and type with practiced efficiency, a symphony of digital warfare. Each person is focused on their screen, ready to execute their new boss's orders. Cheon Gumbo explains that this entire crew will be working here for a full month. Jin Il-seok can only stare in disbelief, asking if he actually bought the entire PC cafe. But Cheon Gumbo calmly clarifies that he only rented it out for the month. Yang A-jun's mind races, trying to calculate the staggering cost of their monthly salaries. Cheon Gumbo reveals he's paying each of them a massive sum, plus bonuses for confidentiality. The number is so high that Yang A-jun can only scream in utter shock, and Jin Il-seok erupts in a fit of pure, unadulterated jealousy. He explains that their job is to support this army of typists for the next month. He holds up a single finger, revealing their salary for this one-month mission, a staggering 10 million won each after taxes. And just like that, his former bullies are on their knees pledging their undying loyalty. He explains the rules of engagement. Each post must blend in with the specific community's culture. The titles must be short and provocative, designed to grab immediate attention. And every single post will contain a link back to the original detailed expose. As soon as a post goes live, the support accounts spring into action to boost its visibility. Using IP changers, they can upvote from the same location without raising suspicion, ensuring the story quickly rises to the top of the popular boards. Once a post hits the popular board, he orders his team to mobilize and flood the comments. The initial wave of comments expresses outrage, shaping public opinion from the very start. This carefully crafted sentiment guides the conversation, turning the story into an unstoppable force. And just like that, on various community boards across the internet, the story of Solid Chemical begins to dominate every single feed. Soon, it becomes the #1 trending topic, an issue no one can ignore. And as the story explodes online, the major broadcasters and media outlets finally start taking the bait. The news reports on the company's continued silence as a man in a luxury apartment watches with disdain. He scoffs at the public outcry, completely unconcerned by the storm brewing around him. He believes that with enough time, the public will forget and the entire scandal will just blow over. But Cheon Gumbo rallies his troops, vowing that he will never let that happen. And with a single command, his digital army gets to work, their keyboards clattering in unison. They flood the internet with new information, revealing the manager is the chairman's nephew and questioning why he hasn't been arrested. The next phase involves targeting specific communities, starting with an interview from a hospital staff member who met the manager in person. She recounts how he tried to force his way into the room, acting with complete arrogance. Another nurse adds that he was even vaping in the hallway, dismissing any attempts to stop him. The post explodes with comments, the public's fury growing with every new detail of his awful personality. Another post features an interview with a different victim, praising Cheon Gyum-bo for exposing the company's crimes. The strategy works perfectly, as the story is now being picked up by major news outlets, using a photo of his sister to fuel the outrage. The public outcry soon spills onto the streets, with protesters demanding justice for the victims. They pelt the company's headquarters with eggs, their signs calling the executives murderers. The relentless pressure finally forces the company's hand, and the general manager and other executives hold a press conference to bow their heads in apology. But their apology is a sham, a calculated move to appease their corporate clients, not the public they've wronged. Because Cheon Gyum-bo's team immediately leaks a list of every major company that does business with Solid Chemical. The information sparks a massive boycott movement, with people now checking every product to cut ties with the corrupt company. But Cheon Gyum-bo knows this isn't nearly enough to make them pay. And his next move is a photo of the general manager leaving a high-end bar with 2 women, just hours after his public apology. The post explodes online, with the public's fury reaching a whole new level of intensity. The story is now a national scandal, with news outlets and the government finally launching a full-scale investigation into the company's crimes. The disgraced general manager is met with a brutal kick to the face. He looks up to see the chairman of Solid Chemical and another executive looming over him. He desperately apologizes, offering to resign and take full responsibility for the scandal. But the chairman just smiles, asking if a simple resignation is enough to make things right. He then points to the man's expensive watch, a clear symbol of his embezzlement. The chairman erupts in laughter, mocking his nephew's pathetic attempt at an apology. He clarifies his demand, telling the man to leave his wrist behind as payment. With a cold grin, he suggests that the hand that stole from him should be cut off. The manager grovels on the floor, begging his uncle for forgiveness. But the chairman coldly explains that because they are family, this is the only way. He holds up a small axe, explaining that this ends with a single wrist. The manager can only tremble in terror, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fear. And as a result of Cheon Gyum-bo's campaign, Solid Chemical's stock price plummets, their reputation completely destroyed. His sister watches the news as the narration reveals it all happened in just 1 month. For 30 days, his army of typists worked tirelessly, manipulating public opinion from the PC cafe. And the reason their secret operation was never exposed is because every single person he hired was either a victim of an industrial accident or a family member of one. The reason they were no longer afraid to speak out against the company was because Cheon Gyum-bo had paid off all their medical bills, giving them a chance to finally heal. With the promise of compensation, their lives could finally begin to recover from the tragedy. He knows that while legal and labor issues still remain for the victims, they can now slowly solve them with expert help as he arrives to visit his sister. But he's surprised to find Suho already there, feeding her a meal. His sister is completely flustered by his unannounced visit, and he immediately regrets not calling first. He can't help but notice that Suho seems to be here every single time he visits. The bodyguard stammers an excuse, claiming he's just making up for his failure during the kidnapping. But as his sister teases him, Cheon Gyum-bo is annoyed to find they're already speaking so informally. He reflects that while his sister is busy with treatment and dating, he spent a fortune from Lotto-chan. And yet his own life hasn't changed at all, as he presents the dessert he brought for them. In fact, he wonders if his life has actually gotten better, questioning what precious thing is even being taken from him. In this new, peaceful life, he was the only one who felt a growing sense of dread. He was slowly realizing what was truly being taken from him. He finally understood what precious thing was slowly fading away. Sometime later, he returns to his old, humble neighborhood in the pouring rain. He's moved back into his old apartment, leaving the luxury penthouse behind. His 3-month contract was up, and he chose not to renew it. His 2 lackeys are there to help, questioning why he has so much luggage. Jin Il-seok grabs him, insisting they had to come for their boss's moving day. They suggest a housewarming party, but Cheon Gyum-bo knows he must not die before his sister's fight is over. So instead of spending on himself, he saved every last one he could. He reflects that after getting this golden opportunity, he has no regrets about what he's done. Standing in his sister's new apartment, he can say with absolute certainty that he wouldn't change a thing. He remembers all the things he used to do with his money, like enjoying a good meal, getting a fresh haircut while decked out in designer gear, and buying expensive jewelry, indulging in every whim. He recalls walking with a confidence he'd never known before, and even the simple fantasies he held in his heart, like being with a beautiful woman. But now he can only stare at a tiny portion of food, a luxury he once would have scoffed at, because the precious thing being taken from him was his appetite, his ability to enjoy these things now completely gone. He sits down with Princess Ren to sign what looks like his last will and testament. He reflects that he's done everything he ever wanted to do, but now he can only stand alone in the dark, contemplating his end. As he writes his final words, a single tear falls onto the page. He breaks down completely, sobbing as he prepares for the inevitable. He tries to laugh it off, calling himself pathetic for being so emotional, but he doesn't know how much time he has left, and this is his only way to prepare. With a sad smile, he holds up the letter, his final act of love. Because the most important preparation he had to make was to leave enough money so his sister would never have to worry again. He knows that taking out more money will only hasten his end, so he decides to use the resources he already has to finish the fight. And the results of his campaign are immediate and overwhelming. The story spreads like wildfire across every major online community. Soon, the scandal becomes the #1 trending topic in the entire country. His army of typists works around the clock, their fingers never stopping. The company, now backed into a corner, tries to solve the problem the only way they know how. They offer a briefcase full of cash to one of the victims, hoping to buy her silence. But what they've given her isn't just money, but a chance at a new life. A chance to finally have a safe and stable home of her own. He welcomes her to her new home, but she's furious he didn't buy one for himself first. But she can't help but admire the beautiful view from the window. He explains that she wanted them to live here together, but he refused to move in, because he couldn't bear the thought of dying in a place meant only for her happiness. He asks Lado-chan to let him die peacefully, without causing trouble for anyone. He knows he could take more money, but he refuses to hasten his own end. He looks at the evolved creature, a sad smile on his face. Because every day he holds on is another day he gets to live. His sister's treatment is going well, and the company has finally promised to compensate her. With everything falling into place, she can finally look forward to a happy, stable future. He wants to enjoy this peaceful, happy life for just a little while longer. But a reminder on his phone confirms he has one day left before he must take money from Lado-chan. To prolong his life, he's been taking out a minuscule amount every 29 days, just enough to keep the wallet active. The simple act of grocery shopping triggers a memory of a time when things were very different. He remembers calling his sister out for barely eating, knowing she was sacrificing her own meal for him. He'd offered to buy more food to share, worried that she had spent all her money on his dinner. But she would always lie, claiming she'd already eaten at her part-time job, just so he could eat his fill without worrying about her. He remembers scraping every last bit of food from the plate, a meal she had given up for him. And as they waited for the rain to stop, he suggested they just run home together. She scolds him for the idea, worried he'll catch a cold if they run through the storm. But their argument is interrupted by a large figure who suddenly appears behind them. He places 2 massive bags of groceries on their table, leaving the siblings completely stunned. It's a younger Suho who offers them a piece of advice, saying that a hard day doesn't mean a hard future. He tells them that if they continue to live with kindness and care for each other, then good fortune will surely find its way to them one day. He speaks from experience, a gentle smile on his face as he tells them to share the food. He then hands them an envelope of cash, telling them to buy whatever they need. With that, he runs off into the rain, leaving his umbrella behind for them to use. As he disappears, a young Cheon Gyumbo shouts his thanks to the kind stranger. He remembers his sister spending a month's worth of food money just to buy him snacks. But for the kind stranger, the cost didn't matter at all. He just smiled, telling himself he'd consider it a diet. Back in the present, Cheon Gyumbo shivers as he finally gets inside his apartment. He's soaked to the bone but insists he has no regrets. Just then, his phone rings, and he answers in a panic, asking about his sister's test results. He listens with bated breath, his heart pounding in his chest.
She tells him that she just heard the news from the doctor.
And his eyes go wide as she says the one word he never thought he'd hear. Remission. Through tears of joy, she confirms that she's finally, truly getting better. She explains through tears of joy that the cancer cells are no longer visible. Cheon Gyumbo breaks down, the weight of the world finally lifting from his shoulders. He immediately bolts through his apartment, overcome with emotion. He rushes over to the small creature resting on his pillow. With a grateful cry, he calls out to his companion, "Lotto-chan!" He scoops it up in his hands, thanking it over and over for this miracle. He falls to his knees, explaining that because of Lotto-chan, his sister is finally in remission. With a hopeful smile, he realizes that it's all thanks to this strange little creature. But as he looks down, he sees Lotto-chan beginning to dissolve into particles of light. A new panic sets in as he asks what's wrong, terrified that something is happening to his friend. He realizes with a start that the creature isn't hurting as it dissolves. It's simply disappearing, fading away into particles of light. Through his tears, he says a final goodbye, remarking on its sudden arrival and even more sudden departure. He apologizes for only ever taking from it, never being able to give anything back in return. He calls himself a pathetic owner, wishing he had been smarter and more considerate. He clutches the last remaining piece, completely overwhelmed with grief and gratitude. Its tiny wing is the last part to begin fading away. But before it's gone, it offers one final gentle beep and a smile. And just like that, his hands are empty, the creature completely gone. He reaches out to the empty space, a tearful smile on his face as he says his last farewell. And just like that, in a quiet room filled with fading light, Lotto-chan was gone. Sometime later, the doorbell rings at a humble-looking house. The sound echoes through a small room where Cheon-gyumbo is lying on the floor. He slowly opens his eyes, roused from his rest by the persistent ringing. Getting to his feet, he wonders if it's just someone checking the gas meter. He cautiously opens the door, peering out to see who's there. His expression shifts to confusion as his visitor says she's come to repay a debt. Because standing in his doorway is none other than Princess Ren, greeting him with a cheerful wave. He stammers, asking how she found his house, but she just asks to come inside out of the cold. As she walks past him, he frantically reminds her that he's completely broke now. She makes a shocking proposal, offering to repay him with her body. But his mind is elsewhere, back at the hospital, questioning if his sister is truly cured. He remembers asking for clarification, confused by the news of her remission. The doctor confirms that her tests show no visible signs of the disease. He explains that the symptoms are gone, and the cancer has shrunk to an undetectable level. But he clarifies that it's not an absolute zero, as microscopic cells can still remain hidden. Cheon-gyumbo listens, the full weight of the diagnosis finally sinking in. The doctor tries to reassure him, explaining that this is a normal part of the body's process. He adds that in all his years, her rate of improvement has been truly astonishing. And if she can stay this way for 5 years, she'll be considered completely cured. He offers the doctor a grateful smile, thanking him for the incredible news. But even as he reflects on the doctor's words, he instinctively understands the truth. The fact that Lotto-chan disappeared the very moment he heard about the remission meant that the precious thing being taken from him every time he withdrew cash wasn't his life or his appetite or even his sister's health. It was her cancer cells, the wallet literally erasing her illness with every one he spent. He remembers taking out that final tiny amount of money just a month ago. That was the last time he could ever withdraw from Lotto-chan, and the exact moment his sister's cancer cells finally reached zero. He's lost in this staggering revelation on the bus when a sudden jolt snaps him back to reality. He's filled with a sudden regret, wishing he had taken just one photo of his strange companion. Sometime later, a cake celebrates the incredible news of his sister's remission. He's joined by Yang Ah-jun and Jin Il-seok, who clap and congratulate him on the good news. They encourage him to make a wish, insisting that his good fortune is theirs as well. The two former bullies offer their sincere congratulations for his sister's recovery. But as they mention the cake was a gift from Shin-ae, Cheon-gyumbo has something else on his mind. He asks them to stop calling him boss, explaining that he spent all the money he had. He looks at the single candle, admitting he can no longer be their backer. Yang A-jun accepts this without argument, saying it's only fair since he's no longer paying them. And with a genuine smile, Jin Il-seok extends a hand, suggesting they can just be friends now. But Cheon-gyumbo is completely lost as Jin Il-seok asks if he thinks their relationship is just ordinary. He reminds him that they all survived, a confrontation with a knife-wielding psycho together. They remember the shared terror of that fight, a bond forged in chaos. He recalls how they took down a corrupt company, with Cheon-gyumbo leading the charge, and the two of them supporting the entire operation from the sidelines. They remember bringing justice to the victims who had lost all hope. With a confident wink, Jin Il-seok declares that they're not just friends, but war buddies. He explains that after being scammed and hitting rock bottom, this mission gave them a new purpose. Yang A-jun explains that with the money Cheon-gyumbo gave them, they were able to pay off all their illegal debts. Jin Il-seok adds that because of him, they can finally live a normal life, saying he literally saved them. He admits it's embarrassing, but tells Cheon Gyumbo that he's a truly amazing person. And with a genuine smile, he offers a sincere apology for everything he did to him in the past. The two of them pull him into a hug, thanking him for giving them a second chance. And for the first time, the three of them celebrate not as enemies, but as friends. He recalls how they gave him a strange gift before he left. A set of one free wish coupons, complete with their own cheesy photos. He also learned that they quit their old jobs and are now studying to become firefighters. He was confused by their sudden change of heart until he found a child's drawing thanking him for saving their family. He learned the drawing was a gift from one of the families he helped, calling him their hero. The child explained it was the first time they'd seen their parents smile in ages, and the simple act of kindness had moved his two former bullies to tears. Cheon Gyumbo reflects that he was worried they'd waste the money he gave them, but was surprised to see them use it in such a wholesome way. His thoughts are interrupted by a familiar voice calling out to him in the cold. It's Princess Ren, who complains that she was about to freeze to death waiting for him. She grabs his arm, eagerly pulling him toward the warmth of his home, because as Cheon Gyumbo explains, he now sees Princess Ren every single night, and their nights are filled with a passion he never could have imagined, a passion that has him gritting his teeth in absolute exertion. She pushes him harder, telling him to match her rhythm and go deeper. But he's at his absolute limit, crying out that he can't hold on any longer. She just tells him to hold it, to push through just a little bit more, because to repay her debt to him. Princess Ren has become his personal trainer, putting him through a grueling workout. He complains that he never even wanted to lose weight as she helps him diet. A few months later, as the seasons begin to change, he and his sister use the compensation money from the company to open a new business. It's a healthy lunchbox shop designed specifically for cancer patients. She explains that the strict limited diet for cancer patients was a burden she wanted to ease for others. And with their subscriptions steadily increasing, the business is already on stable ground. Their success is thanks in part to the word of mouth spread by the very victims they helped. And not just them, Princess Ren, now a fitness influencer, promotes the shop on her live stream. She cleverly avoids calling it an ad, instead telling her curious followers to message her directly. The strategy works perfectly, and her promotion of their diet-friendly lunchboxes causes a massive surge in demand. The sudden popularity is so overwhelming that they run out of ingredients and have to close early, completely exhausted. But Cheon Gyumbo is right there with his sister, working tirelessly at their new shop. As she asks him to get the next delivery, he's already one step ahead, carrying in a heavy box of supplies. He explains that he's already thinking about a new menu, ready to keep their business growing. His sister questions his idea for a new diet menu, wondering if he's overworking himself. But Cheon Gyumbo insists they try it out together, even suggesting they close the shop for it. Their conversation is interrupted by a familiar voice calling out to his sister. It's Suho, who arrives with drinks and a cheerful greeting for Cheon Gyumbo. His sister rushes over, playfully telling him he didn't have to come and help. But as Cheon Gyumbo watches them embrace, he realizes their relationship is getting a little too sweet for him to handle. He quickly makes his exit, deciding to give the happy couple some privacy. As he steps out onto the street, he's immediately caught off guard by another voice, because Princess Ren is there waiting for him, waving with a bright and energetic smile. She joins him on the street, asking about their workout routine for the day. He reflects on his new life, wondering if it's okay to be this peaceful and happy. Princess Ren offers to help as he remembers that this precious, priceless life all started from a single moment in his dark, lonely past. It began with a mysterious man with glowing eyes, and a sudden, unbelievable stroke of luck. A single magical wallet that changed everything. A gift that fell into his hands one fateful day. He knows that a miracle like that will never happen again. So without regret, he vows to spend the rest of his life paying back that incredible debt of luck, so that one day he can become someone else's good fortune. But not everyone's story has a happy ending, as a shovel is driven into the dirt. Because for 7 days, Ji-hagen has been left buried in the mountains, tormented by wildlife. He screams in terror as a small animal bites at his head. The creature scurries away, leaving him to thrash in his makeshift grave. But his screams aren't just to scare away the animals. They're born from the sheer agonizing terror of knowing he's going to die like this. Suddenly he hears a sound in the distance, a flicker of hope in his eyes. But it's just Yang Ae-jun and Jin-il Seok, who have returned to check on their handiwork. Believing he's about to be saved, Ji-hagen screams for help with all his remaining strength. But his former tormentors just look down, casually remarking that it wasn't a water deer after all. Yang Ae-jun confirms his identity with a photo, as Ji-hagen cries in relief, believing he's finally been saved. But the two bullies were just following a tip, surprised to find he was actually buried here. Jin Il-seok grabs him by the shirt, explaining that they've been looking for him for a long time. He then flashes an ID, claiming to be from the police and informing Ji-hagun that he's a wanted man. With an anonymous tip called in, Ji-hagun's life on the run was finally over. The story then jumps forward 3 years, as a call goes unanswered in the bustling city. We find Ji-hagun now out of prison, complaining that his old friend is ghosting his calls. With nowhere to stay, he walks past a man passed out in front of a convenience store. He complains about his bad luck, until his eyes catch sight of a wallet sticking out of the man's pocket. The man is completely oblivious, and Ji-hagun sees a familiar opportunity in the mess. He scoffs at the clerk, a woman with braided hair, judging her from a distance. The clerk turns around, her expression one of mild surprise. He steps up to the counter with a smug grin, asking for a pack of cigarettes. As he pays, his thoughts turn lecherous, sizing her up with a predatory gaze. He then startles her by calling out her name, which he read from her tag. With a confident wink, he suggests they should see each other more often. He walks away, convinced she's the type of person who will give in if he's persistent enough. But as he leaves, a grim narration reveals that this very woman will one day be the one to end his life. The story then cuts to a bright, modern office space, a world away from the dark encounter. 3 women are on their lunch break, talking about how difficult it was to get tickets for a popular event. One of them explains she thought the ticketing would fail, but decided to wait just in case. Another recounts how her hands were shaking with excitement when the tickets finally appeared. But she stops, noticing her friend Yeon-hee is covering her food as she eats. Yeon-hee looks up, flustered, admitting she was so lost in the story she didn't even notice. Her colleagues tease her for being so different outside of work, a much more human side to her. She laughs it off, joking that she was just trying to guard her food from them. But one of her friends then calls her her ideal type, leaving Yeon-hee completely stunned. The woman continues, praising her for her work ethic, her style, and her personality. She then points out that Yeon-hee's clothes are unlike anything anyone else wears at the office. But Yeon-hee just explains that she only wears cheap things that fall apart after a few washes. She explains that the shirt was an incredibly cheap online deal, a buy one get one with free shipping. Her friends are stunned, admitting they thought it was far more expensive and concluding that price isn't what matters. Yeon-hee quietly eats her meal as they praise her for making cheap clothes look so good. Later, the 3 of them walk home from work, complaining about the long hours. She waves a cheerful goodbye to her colleagues, wishing them a safe trip home. For a moment, she watches them go, a pleasant smile on her face. But the instant they're gone, her entire demeanor shifts, her expression turning cold and empty. As she walks away, she reaches into her bag, her friendly work persona completely gone. She pulls on a dark hoodie, zipping it up to conceal her office clothes. And with a black mask, she completely hides her face from the world. She puts on a pair of headphones, shutting out the world around her. With her face now completely hidden, she pulls up her hood to finish the disguise. She descends into the subway station, just another anonymous figure in the crowd. On the train, she sits alone, her posture withdrawn and completely closed off. Her eyes are closed, a stark contrast to the cheerful woman from the office just moments ago. Later, she stops at a store, picking up a cheap pack of women's underwear. She browses the aisles, her choice of clothing a secret she keeps from everyone. After paying at the self-checkout, she leaves the store without a word. She walks down a dark, quiet alley, her heels clicking on the pavement. Arriving at her door, she finds a gas safety inspection notice waiting for her. She punches in the code to her apartment, finally home. Pulling back her hood, she glances down the empty hallway. She lowers her mask, a look of quiet satisfaction on her face. The narration reveals she's relieved the cold weather helps contain a certain smell. She quickly slips inside her apartment, kicking off her heels at the door. Now, she no longer has to run the air conditioner all day just to keep odors from leaking out. She flips a switch, bringing a dim light to the dark room. Tossing her hoodie aside, she announces her arrival to the empty space. Because this is a place where no one is ever allowed to enter. Because her home is a filthy, cockroach-infested mess. She navigates through the piles of trash, completely numb to the chaos. And with a heavy sigh, she collapses onto a pillow on the floor. She clutches it tightly, trying to find some comfort in the filth. Lying on her bed, she admits that she doesn't want to do anything at all. But it's more than that. She has absolutely no energy left to even try. Her home is a hopeless prison, buried under mountains of garbage. She may look perfectly fine on the outside, a stylish and put-together professional. But on the inside, she's rotting away in a world of her own making. A life that only looks okay but is in reality completely and utterly hopeless. We now meet a new man, walking down a hallway as he wishes for a miracle to happen. He hopes that if he just closes his eyes and opens them again, all his stress and worries would simply disappear overnight. And with a strange golden glow in his eyes, he prays for that miracle to finally come to him.